Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to One Civil Laws, where as always we learn through the misfortunes of others. I am your host, Uncivil Law, licensed to practice in both Texas, Virginia, and the United States Supreme Court. We are here today with our ongoing coverage of the Parkland School Resource Officer trial in Parkland, Florida. So far, we have heard today from the most effective witness so far for the state, in my humble opinion, an officer familiar with the training and practices that the defendant himself engaged in because he taught the defendant some of the classes and also able to talk about other classes the defendant took because, of course, there are records of his training. Talking a little bit about that so far, we've also heard cross-examination where the defense lawyer is picking a little bit at the edges, talking about how they never trained in exactly this environment and how you would undergo things if you didn't know exactly where the shots were coming from, picking a little bit at the edges, but not ineffective. I don't think there's a lot to work with here, but the defense attorney's doing great in doing what he can with what he has. So, pretty good stuff. By far and away, the most effective. And as soon as we get started properly, I'm going to turn off the camera and mute myself because I'm going to go make food. But I'll get you guys started before I do that to make sure everything, the world hasn't collapsed or something. To the 95 of you who are currently here, by the way, thank you very much. Just a kind reminder to please retweet the new pinned comment. We did start a new stream for the afternoon session, and your help in bringing word and attention to that stream is very helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rose and Sandra, our moderators, for being here as always. We do appreciate you being here. The channel wouldn't work as well without your guys' presence. That's for damn sure. We got 16 retweets so far. If we hit 50, some gift memberships. So make sure to hit that retweet. Get people engaged. Let people know. Let's get some virality going. Is it okay to ask me a question on the Supreme Court cases I just discussed? Sure. We're just waiting for the court to start? Sure. No problem. What you got? Let's see if there's any news about my toaster oven yet. Ooh, it's apparently going to arrive by 3:15 today. Exciting. Question. So if a medical practitioner's practice providing care via telehealth, they should be tried in the physical location, in their physical location, not the location of the facility of employment? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. If they have like an official duty station that's different than where they're working remotely, then I'm not sure where it would be. So yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. It's a reasonable question. So if you imagine like a telehealth provider in, say, Florida, for example, then the telehealth provider themselves is in Southern Florida, and the person who's providing the health is Northern Florida, and the person they're treating is in Middle Florida, then where's proper venue? I'm not sure. That's a good question. Um, Presumably where the person is injured would be a proper venue. Where the person's actually injured would be a proper venue. But would an additional proper venue be in their home or in their like where their offices are technically based out of? Not sure. Good question. Are we going to get an unboxing? We may get an unboxing. We'll see. I think you can always try the person where the injury actually occurs. So in that scenario, presumably the patient where they are is where the injury ultimately occurs. So I think that's always a proper venue. Hmm. I've got my George Foreman grill already preheated, ready to go. I'm fantasizing mostly about steak at this point. Thank you, Rose. That's very kind of you. Thank you. So I have to edit today's videos. I have to edit yesterday's videos, and I have to edit two videos from last week. And I think I still have to edit, like, because I did some Supreme Court review last week too that I might want to trim out. Too much stuff to edit. I'm pretty sure you're immune to the bot, Rose, as a moderator, but still, we want to set a good example. I also need to find my arm brace for my arm because my wrist is hurting a little bit, so I need to put on my brace. I have a little athletic brace I put on sometimes because I get a little pain in my wrist. I'm getting old, I think. It's very depressing to me. I'm 42 and I don't think I like it very much. Only marginally better than the alternative at this point. I need some age reversal. That's what I need in my life. Maybe soon. Maybe the AI will come along and invent a method for age reversal. Maybe the AI will save me. We'll find out. The AI will save me or the AI will kill me. Or I'll sign up for the Alcor Foundation and have my body frozen so science can undeaden me at some later point. I'll be good.
Mr. Igar's present with Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of the jury. The witness is back on the witness stand. State anything you need me to address before we resume. Defense, you're ready to resume your cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please bring the jury back in.
Do I have any plans on what Sunday meal will be? My meals for the foreseeable future are steak. I have a lot of steak. I'm thinking about eating steak for a while. I may buy more steak and continue eating steak. My meals for the foreseeable future are steak related. Possibly with the addition of some eggs. We'll see. I have enough meat. I could make a chili out of it. I could turn it into just one big chili. That'd be interesting. Like dice it up, turn it into a chili. My George Foreman has now been preheating for 20 minutes. I'd like the witness to be on the stand so that I can turn off the camera and go get food now, please. Yes, this is live. Ish. Ball. Well, I'm going to do an oven sous vide. That's one of the reasons I got the toaster oven, right? I'll do an oven sous vide the rib rye. I'll cook it, and then I'll sear it. That'll be good. Probably sear it first, though, so I can put the bacon on, actually. So I'll sear it first and then cook it in the oven. But yeah, either way. There's a little description in the YouTube video that tries to describe what's going on, basically, but
Jurors entering.
you guys can fill them in on what's going on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back at those seats, you may be seated. All the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get the notepads back out.
Sear first? Yeah, I'll probably sear first. Because I want to do bacon wrapped. And it'd be hard to sear it after the fact if I do bacon
We had a
wrapped.
nice lunch when we took our lunch break.
That'd be
We
weird.
were in the middle of the
Which that's
cross-examination of the
possible.
witness. We're going to pick it up at that point. The witness remains on the witness stand under oath. Mr. Igars, when you are ready, you may proceed.
Thank you.
I got a new frying pan and everything, so we'll do a fry together, steer it
Sir,
together.
you've had about an hour and a half or so at least.
All right, guys, I'm going to turn off the camera and mute and then go get some food. Talk amongst yourselves and behave, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Specifically regarding the questions that I asked of you about whether it was prudent to lock down the school if my client felt that there were shots that could have harmed parents or kids. Is your answer still the same?
Yes, sir.
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Well, let me ask you this. Didn't this entire area become a crime scene? Yes or no?
I don't know the extent of the crime scene, sir.
The minute there's gunshots being fired on campus, this becomes a crime scene, does it not?
Yes.
And officers put up yellow tape on crime scenes, correct?
Yes.
And the purpose of yellow tape is to ensure that nobody enters into the crime scene, correct?
Correct.
And there's many reasons for that, including but not limited to, let's say there's gunfire casings, like bullet casings. You don't want people trampling over the crime scene and moving those pieces of evidence, correct?
Correct.
So wasn't it prudent, at a minimum from that perspective, to make sure that parents and kids don't come onto an active crime scene? Yes or no?
No.
Now you said that it's important for someone in my client's position to use his senses, correct?
Yes.
So for example, if he's looking around and he doesn't see anybody with a gun, he doesn't do nothing, you do the next thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
You look all around, east and west, to see if there's anything that indicates where a shooter or shooters relocated, correct?
Yes.
And maybe you even look to all the different buildings to see if you can see inside. That would be consistent with training, right?
Yes.
And if you can't see inside because the windows are very tinted, You would then even look maybe in the parking lot area if you think there might be shooters over there and look to see if you could see anything, correct?
Yes.
That's consistent with training, right? Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say you've done everything you could regarding that sense, the sense of sight. And there's nothing that tells you, okay, here's the building or the area that the shooter or shooters are located. Let's move to sense of smell, because you mentioned that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Use your sense of smell. And you're trying to smell for like gunfire, right? Something, right?
Yes.
And let's say you smell and there's nothing that indicates where the shooter or shooters are located, right?
Yes.
You move on to your next sense, correct?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay. Well, let's go to taste. There's no way to taste where the shooter or shooters might be located, correct?
Correct.
All right. So the next major one would be hearing, right?
They work hand in hand, sir.
Okay. So do you know in the 4 minutes and 15 seconds that my client had to hear shots, do you know, first of all, where the shooter or shooters were actually located when those shots were fired?
Would I know, sir? Is that
Yeah.
correct? No, sir. I wasn't there.
So you don't know if the shots were fired within 10 feet of him or 73 yards away, correct?
It's speculation, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained. Real quick sidebar.
If hypothetically the first shots that ring out are from 73 yards away, it would be more difficult to discern where those shots are coming from than if they were right in front of you, correct?
Hypothetically, as in what? The distance?
Yes.
It probably will, yes.
Okay. And if hypothetically, the door of a building is open and those shots are fired westbound, that also could affect one's ability, hypothetically, to discern where the shots are coming from, correct?
If the door was open, yes, sir.
Yes. And you don't know whether the door was open or not, correct?
No, sir.
You talked a lot about training, right? And one of the first things that you do is when you believe that something's happening, first thing you do is you don't stand in place. You go to the area where it occurs, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if hypothetically you're in building number 1 in the administrative office, okay, and you learn that there's possibly firecrackers in the 1200 building, you're trained to move, correct?
Yes.
You're trained to get there as quickly as possible, correct?
Yes.
And if the fire alarm goes off while you're investigating a firecracker complaint, you are trained, are you not, to move even quicker, correct?
I don't understand what you mean by firecracker. Depends. It's a fire alarm, so you respond and see what's going on, sir.
But when there's a fire alarm going off, you're trained to believe that there's a greater sense of urgency, so you should probably move quicker to the area,
Yes.
right? Okay. Do you know whether my client did that or not?
Mr. Eichler, this gentleman wasn't there.
Okay.
That was part of our sidebar discussion.
Okay.
He's an expert. You may ask him any hypothetical question you want. You may not ask him anything about February 14th, 2018, because, again, this gentleman was not present. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. And so when you get to an area that you believe your life may be in danger, either because you think there might be sniper fire or there might be people running around with guns, isn't it your training to take a tactical position of cover and not leave yourself out in the open exposed?
Define belief.
What do you think I mean by belief?
Stimuli. Sounds. Wrong confirmation, sir. Not just sound alone.
based upon whatever you're seeing, all the stimulus, everything you possibly see, hear, taste, smell, you believe that you possibly could be in danger. You physically could be shot. Aren't you trained to take a tactical position of cover? Yes or no?
It's not a yes or no question.
Aren't you trained that when you believe that there could be an active shooter on campus, to immediately order a code red? Yes or no?
Sir, no. I don't know what the code red is. I never worked in schools until now, until after the fact.
Okay. Aren't officers trained when they hear gunfire to immediately get on their police radios and announce to other officers, shots fired?
Correct.
Okay. If we can play the first one, 220.
This requires everything to be off, right? Court deputy unit, we need all the TVs off, please.
We're going to do 22326. Now, while we're setting that up, tell the jurors why it's important to train officers to immediately announce shot fired instead of waiting and delaying reporting that.
You're giving active intel. At the same time, you just want to say shot fired, you are required to give a location.
And in doing so, you're also alerting all other officers, and they'll then come to the scene to help out kids, parents, teachers, anybody else who needs help, correct?
Correct.
If you can play that one.
We good? Okay, go ahead.
17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4.
Juliet 3, we have possible, could be firecrackers. I think we got shots fired. Possible shots fired. 1200 building.
If an officer thinks it may be possible firecrackers, but could be shots fired, it's probably better, pursuant to the training, to err on the side of caution and announce possible shots fired, correct?
At that time, yes.
And that's exactly what you just heard him do, correct?
With a location, yes.
And with that announcement, doing that, that's what he's trained to do, isn't it?
Yes.
In other words, it would be inconsistent with his training if he thought possible firecrackers, possible shots fired. He goes, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I'm running away from the scene. That would have been inconsistent with training, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if at all possible, even before you take a position of cover, if you're able to report shots fired and stand out in the open, you're trained to try to do that rather than first taking cover, correct?
It depends on the situation, sir.
Because every second matters, doesn't it?
If you're talking about the, just for clarification, are you talking about an active killer position, a situation right now, or are you just talking in general?
Let's talk in general first, and we'll go to a specific scenario. If you hear gunfire, if a police officer hears gunfire, if it could be done right away, instead of even waiting to take cover, isn't that the way that you're trained to do it? Isn't that the best way to do it?
If you're not under threat, yes, give the location and give shots fired.
Because even just taking an extra 10 to 15 seconds to then take a position of cover and then safely announce on your radio could cost 10, 15 seconds that could be critical, correct?
In response time, yes.
So if, hypothetically, my client, before taking cover, immediately after hearing shots fired, hypothetically, announces on his radio, shots fired, the announcement that we heard, that would be consistent with training, correct?
No, sir. In that particular situation, no, sir.
Hypothetically, he doesn't know where the shots are coming from, sir. You understand?
If I may explain.
Sure.
If I'm in a school setting and shots are fired based upon the training and the priorities of life, I'll have to respond to where the shots are coming from because more than likely a student is being killed.
Yeah, we talked about that. We agree. My question to you is, if you don't, in that moment, know where the shots are coming from, and it could potentially be anywhere between the football field and the parking lot, and anywhere north and south, isn't it better to immediately first announce on your police radio that shots are fired so that the cavalry can come? Yes or no?
Yes.
The other things you brought up on direct to look for would be if there's any blood anywhere, correct?
Yes.
And if there's no blood in front of you or anywhere trickling towards the 1200 building or any other place, you move on and look for other things, correct?
Correct.
Like you brought up people fleeing, correct?
Yes.
And if you don't see anybody fleeing from anywhere, you keep looking and you try to find other stimuli to help you understand where the shots may be coming from, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you talked about something called tunnel vision, right?
Yes, sir.
Where you could be looking in a certain location, but then miss things on your periphery, correct?
Possible.
You can train all day long. You can take 24 hours, 10 days in a row. You still can't stop an officer from having tunnel vision when they're in a very stressful situation. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And also auditory exclusion. No matter how much you train, there are officers that can still experience not hearing certain things when they're extremely stressed, correct?
Yes, sir.
These guys, your officers are human, correct?
Correct, sir.
And people handle stress differently, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the next transmission, please. You have the next one? The one that I told you? Okay, I'll tell you what time. That would be at 2:23:55.
Thank you, Poirot. Juliet 3, make sure we get to the units over here. I need to shoot down Stoneman Douglas, the intersection.
If it's appropriate to shut down a school, isn't the way that he said it consistent with his training to make sure that dispatch knows to repeat that and to actively then encourage officers to shut down the school?
Yes, sir.
Do you ever have training where you assume that the radios are broken?
No, sir.
Because without radios, officers are significantly hampered in their ability to learn real-time intelligence, correct?
Correct. May I explain?
Sure.
We don't train for radios being broken, but we do train active killers based upon sensory overload from fire alarms or gunshots or auditory exclusion to still move towards the threat.
You had mentioned on direct that if you think you're under sniper fire and you're certain of it, and that's what you're experiencing, you should say it over the of 5 to 10 different scenarios. Are you trained to get on the radio and say, you got officers, many officers at one time, talking a lot, and you want to try to keep the airways as free as possible, correct?
Correct.
And so you want to be very selective in what you're saying over the radio, correct?
Correct.
So it's possible for an officer to feel like sniper fire could be a scenario, but not necessarily articulated on the radio, correct?
I'm not a dispatcher. Dispatcher could hear as it coming, and she'll tell the ear to stop
Say it again.
transmitting. I'm not a dispatcher. Dispatcher will actually say stop the ear, or 10-3 is a code we use to allow the person with the most pertinent information at that time to get the ear.
And isn't it true that when you respond to an active shooter scenario, one of the things that you're generically trained to think is there could be potential sniper fire, correct? Until you know otherwise, right?
No, sir. Not based upon the layouts we trained in and the way Broward County is built. Sniper fire is very specific.
If you don't know precisely where shots are coming from, shouldn't you assume that they could be coming from anywhere?
360 awareness, yes, sir.
And the truth is, you don't eliminate any possible scenario until you know with certainty, because you could lose your life otherwise. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
You train your officers that you do not leave their position of cover unless they have a plan and or know where the shots are coming from. Isn't that correct?
Based upon what situation, sir?
A hypothetical where you don't know where the shots are coming from, that it's not safe to leave your position of cover if you think you're going to be harmed, and just start guessing. Isn't that what your testimony is?
No, sir.
Isn't it your testimony that before you put a plan into motion, you've got to have some intelligence to know where to go and what to do? Isn't that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And first and foremost, it's consistent with your training to put the officer first, in that if he gets shot, he's of no use to anyone. Isn't that correct?
That's incorrect, sir, based upon the lesson plan.
Based upon what?
The lesson plan.
Do you remember giving a deposition on August 30th, 2022 at 2:40 p.m. and me asking you the following question? Line 9, page 16. And first,
Objection, proper engagement.
Yeah, that's sustained.
do you remember giving a statement on August 30th, 2022, where a court reporter was present, and you rose your right hand and you swore to tell the truth? You remember that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Judge, I'm going to interrupt the proper engagement.
Not yet. Go ahead, keep going.
Do you remember me asking you the following question? And first and foremost,
That part's sustained. Just ask the statement, sir. What's the statement?
question.
No. You're not the witness, sir. What is the inconsistent statement that you are alleging the witness said? Ask him, did he say that statement? Go ahead, sir.
Did you or did you not say correct when I asked you the following statement?
But his inconsistent statement is the word correct? Sidebar.
agree that you train officers to take a tactical position of cover if they think that they're taking on sniper fire, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jurors why you teach people to do that.
Why, as in to take cover?
Yes, why do you instruct officers who believe that they could be taking on sniper fire to take a position of cover?
If an officer is actively engaged in a gunfight with a sniper, he'll take cover for self-preservation.
If they believe and they can't see the shooter or shooters, but believe they could be harmed with bullets, shouldn't they be taking a tactical position of cover?
Define belief, sir.
One of your deputies believes, based upon what they've seen and heard, that they could be harmed by bullets, and they don't know where the shots are coming from. Don't you train them to ensure that they take a tactical position of cover so they're not killed?
Only to take in live fire or wrong confirmation, sir.
Okay,
If you hear a sound, we just don't take cover. We go towards the gunshots.
I understand. My hypothetical presupposed that you don't know from where the shots are coming from, correct? You understand that, right?
You wouldn't take cover because you don't know where the sound's coming from. You wouldn't just take arbitrary cover. You have to investigate.
Have any of your officers ever been confronted with a scenario where, because of the pronounced echo outside of a building and or reverberation, they literally don't know where the shots are coming from? Yes or no?
I wouldn't know. I don't know.
I want to refer you again to the active shooter policy, and I'm referring to 4.37, subsection C, and this is of Defense Exhibit number 2. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, could you turn it on?
This can all be on the
Sure, sure, sure. So even in the active shooter policy, the first line of subsection
Uncivil's
C
back.
is if real-time intelligence.
I ate the steak.
Right, because there's scenarios.
There is no more
where
steak.
real-time intelligence
It is
either
it has disappeared in my
capable,
stomach
or
hole.
it doesn't exist, right?
Real time.
It was
as
beautiful.
constant
It was
shots,
glorious.
That's real time.
Okay. But let's say, in this hypothetical, you can't tell where the specific shots are coming from, correct? In the hypothetical that I gave you, it covers
30 retweets so
hundreds
far.
and
We're getting
hundreds
pretty
of
close on the
yards
retweet
in
thing.
either
So
direction.
we can get
This-
20 more
this-
retweets. I'm going to
this
give some memberships.
incorporates
It
that
was
scenario, correct?
incredibly good.
You know, you understand that, right?
Objective compound, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
This does say if real-time intelligence exists, correct? That's the first part of this, correct?
Correct.
Then it says, the sole deputy or team of, at this point we know he's a sole deputy, correct?
Correct.
It says, of deputies, may enter the area. Let me make sure that's on here. I want to make sure that word exists. Does that word may appear in there?
Yes.
You would agree, may suggests an option, correct?
Correct.
That word may existed in the policy on the day that my client was there at the school, correct?
Correct.
It was in there, you know, because
Nice.
there are scenarios where an officer shouldn't have to risk his life when he knows that he could be immediately hit with gunfire the minute he moves from a position of cover. Isn't that correct?
Not in that context, sir.
Isn't it a fact that immediately after this shooting, that was changed to shall?
Objection to relevance, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained.
On the day of the shooting, it did say may, did it not, sir?
That has to strike that from the record as well. The prior.
Well, the prior question was objected to. There was no answer. The jury's not going to regard it. Your request is denied. Go ahead, sir, ask your next question.
The policy here on the day in question, when the shooting occurred, says may, correct?
If you scroll down, sir, it's in the bottom of the page.
I'm sorry?
If you scroll down to the bottom of the page,
Yes.
it will give the date when that policy was in effect.
Okay. We'd already discussed it. I think you said it earlier. It was in effect when the shooting took place, correct?
Is it effective date? Yes, 3/28/2016 appears.
Okay. So we're crystal clear and we'll move on. It said a deputy, the sole deputy or deputies may enter. That's what it says, correct?
Yes.
Nice, good job.
You would agree that before you move towards a threat, you must first locate and identify the threat, correct?
You're trying to determine, yes, move towards the threat, yes. You use your senses to find the
Say it
intel.
again.
You move towards the threat based upon your senses, the intel.
And your training teaches officers to keep an open mind of all possibilities when they don't have information to the contrary. Yes or no?
Define contrary.
Really?
To the alternative.
To
Unless
what,
they
sir?
know otherwise.
To what, sir? What specific event or incident you're referring to as using your senses?
You got it kidding, right?
For example, if you think that there's one shooter, you have to assume that there's more, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's the +1 rule, correct?
Correct.
Until and unless you are told and you know with certainty that there's only one shooter, correct?
Correct.
If you think there may be 4 or 5 roaming around on campus, you have to assume that until you know with certainty that there's fewer. Isn't that
By the way, how are the volume levels? Do I need to adjust
Certainty
my
as
own
to
mic?
responding or certainty as the number
How's it
of
sound?
shooters?
Is it too loud? Do I need to adjust it back down?
Sir, we're referring to hypothetically, a person's on the scene.
Do I need to set it back to
and he
20%?
thinks
Let me
that
set
there
back to
may be 4 or
20%.
5 shooters.
I assume I'm too loud.
He has to keep believing that until and unless he's told.
All right, set the mic back to
certainty and
20%.
knows with
Hopefully that's
certainty
right.
That there's fewer. Isn't that correct? That's what the training tells you.
The training says respond to shots being fired. It doesn't depend how many shooters you have. You still have to respond.
Specifically, sir, as it relates to how many
I
shooters
hate
you
court
think may
volume
be in your
so very
area.
much.
Your training tells you to continue believing that there's multiple
Getting it right
shooters,
for
if
you
that's what
guys
you
is sometimes a
believe,
nightmare.
until and unless you know
It's a pain in my
otherwise with
ass.
certainty. Yes or no?
Yes.
All right, you got your point. Move on, man.
As harsh as it is, officers are trained that if they do know where the shooter or shooters are located, and they do go in, that they're not to stop and attend and give first aid if you're alone. You have to step over the bodies and continue on, correct?
If there's active shooting, yes, sir.
So it would have been contrary to policy if my client did know that the shooter or shooters were in the 1200 building to go in and stop and begin to render aid to the first person that he sees, correct?
Correct.
You've instructed
Good job
your
on cross.
deputies under situations like this. Remember, the cavalry is on their way, so it's better to hold
Virtual
in a
source
position
to
of
compress,
cover
maybe.
than to expose yourself to unknown threats. You've instructed people under your supervision to do
I've
that.
tried that before and had problems with virtual
Based on
sourcing.
that scenario,
I'll give
it
a
doesn't
shot.
apply to that. You have to read the whole entire scenario in context, sir, to give substance to that.
Isn't it a fact that you would be, your words, foolish to move and compromise your safety without having first some intel as to where the shooter or shooters are located? Yes or no?
I'm going to object to if we can go sidebar very quickly.
Sure.
All right, well, I forgot to look for the compression sleeve while I was. Oh, I've got a bottle there. It needs to go in the dishwasher or soak, actually. Where's my thing for my wrist? Hold on.
clear between someone possibly
somewhat quiet now.
violating a
Turn it up.
policy versus someone
Fucking
violating
hate
the law.
microphone
Those are
volume
two different
sometimes.
things, correct?
Correct.
Turn it up
You
to
were just
50%.
commenting
Hopefully
on what
that'll be
you
right.
believe to be my client violating your policy, correct?
Which policy?
I don't know, whichever way, your training, I think Mr. Killoran asked you if you thought that he didn't do what he was trained. That's what you testified to, right?
In the context of not responding appropriately, yes.
Okay, but that's different than saying my client, you're not saying my client committed any criminal offense. That wasn't your testimony, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object to asking for legal notice.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Okay.
I might have to pause my thing and look for my thing. In fact, let me do it. Let me look for
Let's
it real fast. I want to find the thing
play
for my wrist because my wrist is bothering me.
228,
I'll be right
please.
back.
Just need those monitors off. They're off. $228, sir.
Please.
Building 13 and 900 building.
Now, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
Thank you. If my client, if hypothetically a person believes that there's shots fired between the 12 and 1300 building, by announcing it the way he did in real time, isn't that consistent with his training?
He's announcing and he needs to go in, yes.
Okay, that wasn't my question, sir.
Sir, if
And when you say he needs to go in, where, to the 1300 building?
shots are being fired between the 12 and 13 building, you have to ascertain where the shots are coming from.
I understand, but if he doesn't know, and he's saying it's between the 12 and 1300 building, you're not suggesting he runs to the 1300 building and starts to go into there, are you?
I'm suggesting that he's, based upon the shots fired, the last direction he got is to try to seek that particular direction.
Okay, so what does your training tell you? If he's, let's say he's considering 12, 1300 building, right? This is 228, so, you know, we're already well into the shooting, okay? Tell me, between the 12 and 1300 building, what does training tell you as far as where to start? And just so you know, if the 1200 building is 73 yards long, and the 1300 building is 73 yards long, and there's about 20 yards in between, and we're also including the areas around the 12 and 1300 building, what does training tell you? Where's he supposed to go?
Judge, I'm not objecting to compound.
Yeah, that's
Found it.
sustained.
What does
Found
training,
it.
what is,
Mr. Aguilar,
Found it.
I'll ask him about training. I'll withdraw the
This
question.
is hypothetical.
Okay,
I don't know how many
hypothetically,
times I have to tell you this, sir. This
Okay.
gentleman wasn't there that day.
I understand.
So, go ahead, sir.
hypothetically, if someone believes that the shots are between the 12 and 1300 building and the immediate area around it, we're talking about approximately 200 yards, just in here. What is training
Glorious.
tell you as to where someone's supposed
Thank
to go?
you.
Pick a building and have your backup respond to the other building, but pick one, do something.
Okay. So what does training tell you if you start to run to the 1300 building, right? And what happens if you think, what happens hypothetically if someone's shooting in the parking lot? Aren't you taking yourself out of position because now you're in the 1300 building?
Sir, you just said you're transmitting 12 and 1300, 12 and 13.
And
There's
the
more.
areas around it?
The areas around it. You pick one. You gave a location which building you're going to take, and the cavalry, as you said before, will pick the 1300 building, the parking lot. They know you didn't cover that area. They know specifically where you are.
That would leave all of this area and the 1200 building completely vulnerable, correct?
It's just one deputy, yes.
And so it wouldn't be, training tells you that you just go over here to the 1300 building and start looking? That's what you're telling us?
If that's what your census is telling you, that the shots are fired, you went left or right. The point here is to do something so to mitigate lives being lost.
Well, monitoring a radio, that would be doing something, correct?
That's could be a stationary action.
And hoping at any moment that dispatch will tell you where the shooter or shooters are located. That's doing something, correct?
Based upon the training of an SRO, based upon active killer shooting, based upon policy, based upon lesson plans. You hear shots fired, you move towards it.
22902, please. Asking other officers, before we play that, getting on the radio and asking another officer if he or she knows where the shooter is located, that would be doing something pursuant to training, correct?
You're trying to get a location, yes, intel.
Okay, so let's listen to that.
10-4, fire rescue is being notified.
Jerry, does he know where the shooter is?
Okay, so if hypothetically an officer asking another officer, Deputy Perry, does he know where the shooter is? The way that he said that, is that pursuant to training if he's trying to find out intelligence from another officer?
Okay, first of all, Deputy Perry, what's he doing?
In this hypothetical, he's with somebody who's injured, and he announces that over the radio. And so my client then, hypothetically, then says, Perry, does he know where the shooter is? That's the scenario. You asked, so I'm giving it to you.
Yes, it's good.
In that scenario, isn't he doing what he's trained to do?
He's trying to ascertain more information, yes.
So that's using one of his senses, correct? To try to find out where the shooter or shooters are located, correct?
Correct.
And you agree with me that you're hearing someone who doesn't know where the shots are coming from, correct?
Hold on. I'll be right back.
How deep are we into the calls?
Do you know at 229?
Mr. Myers, you're invading the province of the jury.
I'll move along.
Again, sir. Again, the jury's going to decide what the exhibits and evidence show and what they don't show. That is their decision to make. This gentleman was not present that day. His opinion on what the evidence shows or doesn't show is not relevant to the jury's determination. Go ahead, sir. Ask another
At
question.
2:45, 25, final. Do you have that?
Good news, everyone. My convection oven is here. Yay. We have oven.
State's exhibit
Oven has arrived.
and play at 2:45, 25. I want you to listen to this. The last one we just played, you recall, was from 2:29, so we're talking about 16 minutes later.
It's a big box, too. Big box.
While he's setting that up, if you're not sure where shots are coming from, continuously scanning the area with your gun out is how you were trained to do that, correct? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, correct?
I wouldn't stand in one position with a gun out, sir. And we're not trained to do that.
Scanning the area is something that you guys train people to do, correct?
Depending on the situation. If it's an active shooter, we're scanning and moving. You don't stand still.
I understand, sir. It's important to keep your gun out, correct? That's how you're trained, right?
Gunshots, yes.
Okay, so had my client put his gun away and folded his arms, let's say, that's not how you're trained, correct?
Yes,
So
sir.
having the gun out is something consistent with your training, correct?
Yes.
And if there are students hypothetically coming out of a neighboring building like the 700 building, officers are trained to tell them to get back, and move them to safety, correct?
Get back in what direction, Mr. Nissan?
Back into their classrooms because there's an active shooter, correct?
Not necessarily. If they're fleeing the area, they might be fleeing a shooter. We don't know where the shooter is.
If an officer believes that children are in harm's way, aren't they trained to get them out of harm's way? Yes or no?
Yes,
And if that officer believes that the safest place for them to go back to is the very classrooms that they just came from, isn't that consistent with training?
it can be, depending on the situation, sir.
If my client is a school resource officer and has both a police radio and a school radio, it's consistent with training for him to keep monitoring both, correct?
For his job responsibility, yes.
And while it would be more difficult to monitor both, if he's looking for all the information he can get, it would be prudent for him to be doing that, correct?
Looking and, I'm sorry, I don't follow your question.
Listening to both his police and school radio is what he's trained to do to get the most real-time intelligence, correct?
Yes.
And if my client does have some helpful real-time intelligence, he's trained to then give that out to people who may be standing by him to help, correct?
Correct, that and via radio, yes, sir.
Okay. And if he's asked to provide his school keys to officers so that they can gain access to certain classrooms, that's something that he'd be trained to do, to turn over his keys, correct? And not keep them for himself, correct?
I cannot give an opinion on that. I've never worked in a school, and I don't know what the school resource officer protocol is.
And if an officer is asked by a SWAT team to do hand drawings to assist them in the evacuation, that's something officers are trained to do and not to refuse, correct?
Correct.
Let's play that.
Well, if you
Three
can
I
show
have
the
was
officer
from Coral
doing these
Springs that
things, that'd
called
be
and
great.
advised he was
I don't know
It
what's
was
going
the
on.
1200, 1300 building last time we heard the shot.
Okay. You did hear 1300 building last time we heard shots, correct?
Correct.
And an officer continuously updating on his radio where he last thought he heard shots, that's something you're trained to do, correct?
Yes,
It's important to let everybody know what you're thinking in real time, correct?
correct.
It would be nice if we knew what the officer was doing, you know? It'd be nice if we knew these things.
Every
It's
time
like,
an officer gives out information on the radio,
I
they're
just
doing
keep
it to
wondering,
try to be of service to other officers, correct?
Correct.
keep wondering what he was doing, right?
Thank you, sir.
Based on that, and you redirect. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel.
Good afternoon.
I had a question about defense 2 and the language used in that. Just to be sure. Thank you.
Is it on, Mr. Cook?
No, not yet, Your Honor.
Is the light on?
Sorry.
Hope none of you are sensitive to flashes.
Lieutenant Colonel, do you see where it says C?
Yes,
Deputies may enter the area.
correct.
What does that mean?
May, it depends on the risk. So in this situation, there's shots being fired between those double doors back there, those glass doors. I know the shots going on. I can see victims, but at the same time, there's an incendiary device strapped against the door. It gives me an out as may. It's not saying shall. If I go shall, I open a door, I'm taking everybody out. So I would basically find an alternative to enter there. It gave us an out, like you don't have, you cannot write policy for every possible scenario. So it gives us leeway to adapt based upon totality of circumstances.
And that example that you just used with the incendiary device, are deputies still trained that they have to seek out the active shooter, or your scenario, the person with the bomb?
Your obligation is still to find the threat.
So based upon the training, may doesn't obviate or get rid of your obligation to do something, does it?
Correct.
You must do something.
Based upon a lesson plan and priorities of life, you have a duty, expectation to perform.
Now, under cross-examination, you were asked about being selective in what is said over dispatch. Is that something that's trained?
No.
Explain.
As in what's
Being selective. In regards to, I'll be more specific, in regards to potential, or in regards to sniper fire. Are they trained, your deputies trained to say sniper fire if they believe there's sniper fire in the area?
you give as much intel. If it's sniper fire, you have to give it because it allows responding resources to plan it. A sniper fire, that means the person has an elevated position on you. Therefore, your tactics are going to change. The responding deputies, officers are going to respond differently. Tactics change. The more information you give on the scene, the better we can prepare for it. We're the cavalry.
Based upon the dispatch audios that you heard, and I can play them again if need be, when Mr. Peterson's saying the 1200 building, would that be the hot zone?
If I was a responding deputy and it said shots fired 1200, I'm going directly to the 1200 building.
Because that's the hot zone.
That's considered a hot zone because shots are being fired at the 1200 building location.
On cross-examination, Mr. Arglash asked you about getting real-time intelligence from the dispatch. What's dispatch's job?
To relay information.
Real-time intelligence in the hypothetical where a SRO, school resource officer, is standing about 75 feet away from a building where shots are coming from the inside. Who's the real-time? What's the real-time intelligence?
The real-time intelligence is the deputy on scene, hearing the live feedback, stimulus, and giving updated information.
Now, in the hypothetical that Mr. Eiglosh presented to you, testimony was elicited that if you go to the, looking at defense identification F, that if you go over to the 1300 building, that some areas are vulnerable.
Correct.
In training for a lone solo deputy, are there choices? Are they trained that choices have to be made?
Yes.
And what are those choices based upon?
Live intel, stimulus.
And based upon that live intel, there might be an area of vulnerability.
100%, yes, sir.
Because but the training is use your senses to detect what's going on and to decide what to do next. Is that what they're trained?
Intel and do something. Don't stand still. Do something.
On cross-examination, you were asked about, Mr. Peterson, or in a hypothetical, students get back. And you stated something to the effect of, well, no. And why did you say no?
If students are fleeing from an area, are we stopping the students and trying to gather intel? They might be saying, hey, there's a shooter here. If not, we just basically send them back into the shooter.
So the training is based upon the stimuli, sound of gunshots, whatever it may be. Then you help to protect the students by telling them to get away from a specific building.
Right, correct.
You were also asked questions about providing the school keys or asked to do hand drawings. In your experience in the training, is that things that are done after the shooting?
The drawings?
Yes.
It can be live as if that person is removed from the scene or after, like, hey, what did we do wrong? Or at the scene, like, if you're removed from the scene and it's becoming warm, I need more intel. If you're no longer a player, actively involved as a contact member, and SWAT responds or whoever, they're trying to get a bit of layout, trying to understand the layout, because you are the subject matter for that particular building.
This isn't something that occurs, or is it in the training, is this something that occurs while the shots are being fired?
No, sir.
You were asked earlier about the verbiage, about the words used in the dispatch, whether you're trained in to use certain words. And I could play it again, but the language at 245.25 from Mr. Peterson says something to the effect of between the 1200 and 1300. Last time we heard shots. Is the last time, is that something that's trained to use that kind of words, last time, as opposed to the dispatch you heard earlier this morning?
It's basically saying the shots have ceased. The last time active intel was at that particular time, at that particular location between those two buildings.
So in terms of whether it's something present tense or something past tense, is that something trained, either at the academy or during training, something of importance to notify fellow officers what's going on?
You're giving them a point of reference. The last shots we heard was this particular location. It's going to be the vicinity. We have a starting point at least.
Just one moment. I have nothing further.
Based on that, you recross?
Yes, just one question.
Go ahead.
The prosecutor just asked you about the announcement on the radio if you think there might be sniper fire or other people shooting on campus. Doesn't saying stay 500 feet away, doesn't that cover it? Isn't that how you're trained?
In any lesson plan, no, sir. I would not give an arbitrary number of 500 feet. 500 feet in pertaining to what?
Should he have said 600 feet?
What's the reference?
If you believe that people, officers, teachers, students, parents coming onto the campus could face potential sniper fire or someone wandering around with a gun in that area, saying stay 500 feet away, doesn't that cover it? Isn't that how you're trained?
With specific follow-up information, sir. Arbitrarily, I said 500 feet. 500 feet as someone actually shooting, 500 feet as an incendiary device. I need specific. We just arbitrarily just give it the distance. We don't.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, state, is the witness excused?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, you may step down. Thank you very much. While he's doing that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a quick restroom break. Same admonition as always, please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else till we reach the end of the trial. I'll tell you when that is. If you leave notepads in your chairs and step in the back one moment, I will be right back with you. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, that's the end of that witness. So fine. Good witness for the state. Good job on cross. Didn't have a whole lot to work with, but got what we needed out of him. Got as much as we could out of him on cross. So good job on cross. Didn't have a lot to work with, but made it work. Good job. Again, teasing concepts that he can use to his advantage in a closing. So, but I'm surprised we didn't use the witness for more. I'm surprised we didn't use the witness to get in the tape and talk about the tape and really show how the tape was deficient versus the training. I feel like this witness could have done more than we used him for, but okay. I've also created a new poll encouraging you to retweet. Let's see how you guys are doing on the tweets. Well, so far 35 of you have tweeted or retweeted, so that's very nice. Thank you very much. If we get to 50, I'll buy some gift memberships. Thank you to the 175 of you who are currently here. We appreciate all of you who are here. Steak was fantastic. I enjoyed steak. Steak is life. Prosecution wants to drag this out, maybe. I mean, they're not supposed to arrest until like the 20th. So we still have another couple days of direct. So we'll see. Appreciate all of you who are here. Appreciate all of you joining me. This is interesting trial for sure. I'd love to see if we can get more people watching. I'm grateful for all 184 of you, but I'd love to see if we can make that number grow. I'd love to see if we could get like 10 times more people in here. That'd be cool. Some of my cohorts in this space can get people with that many viewers, and I'd love to see if we can get up there too. I'd like to think I'm offering a good quality product. So I'm hoping that retweeting and such will help bring more attention to the channel and help it grow. We want the channel to grow. We want the channel to succeed. We want to continue to thrive. Any day I'm able to buy a Bugatti would be fine as well. Be one of those creators. We're a little bit away from Bugatti territory right now. I've got my hand brace on. Sometimes my wrist is sore. Then I'm just, it's good stuff. 37 of you have now retweeted. Awesome. Kick ass. Uncivil Editing LLC. Editing is a pain in the ass. Editing is a total pain in the ass. Maserati does 185. My Infiniti FX35, I think, does 134, if memory serves correctly. Naturally limited. It's got a V6, 3.5 liter. Good car. Does 303 horsepower, I think. All-wheel drive. SUV. The driver's side mirror actuator is constantly running right now, which is kind of annoying. It's just always running. There's a little bit of noise from the driver's side mirror because it's constantly running. And I don't really feel like I have the money to fix it because I'm on a budget. So I've been driving around with a mirror where the motor is always continuously running, which is kind of annoying. But that's the only thing that's really wrong with it. Otherwise, it's been a champion of a car. I bought it when it was, I don't know, I'd have to check my original paperwork, but I think I put 100,000 miles on it since I bought it. And I really enjoy it. I'm really getting tired of the light flashing on screen. There we go. You guys don't have to watch it. So, because it's annoying. Yeah. If you have the radio on or music on, it drowns it out pretty well. But still, you know, if you just have it silent, you know, just always, you know, okay. It's like, all right, yeah. Could a conviction in this case lead any bystander with a concealed carry being charged for not acting? Presumably not. No. No, I don't think so. Is it possible to pull a fuse? I'll look at the fuse box. It might be possible to pull the fuse for it. Good call. It would turn off my electronic mirrors completely, but I don't need to really adjust them because I'm the only one driving, so yeah, maybe I'll just turn it. Maybe I'll just pull the fuse. That'll solve that problem. Good call. I'll look at the fuse box diagram. To the best of my knowledge, there's no law that requires anyone with a concealed carry permit to act in any situation. No affirmative duty is the remaining rule. His duty comes presumably as a result of his job, is the idea at least, and him accepting the responsibility. So if you don't undertake the responsibility in some way, you don't have the responsibility. So no, there's no general responsibility. People were just asking questions and I'm just trying to answer them. Your Explorer's trunk kept opening by itself? Yikes. You did that for faulty ABS? Well, presumably that means you no longer have any ABS if you pull a fuse. Seems like an unideal scenario. I believe this is true. Going to my obscure pedantry knowledge. The United States never required cars to have ABS. It did eventually require cars to have electronic stability control, which as a practical matter required cars to have ABS. But ABS itself was never mandated. I believe that's true. So I don't know who knows the federal regulations and wants to be a pedant about it, but I don't believe the federal government ever formally required cars to have ABS. I actually read the federal regulations once on electronic stability control because I was just interested. That's just what I do with my free time. I'm a nerd. I'm a law nerd. I read regulations for fun sometimes. It's okay. I have a problem. I can stop anytime I want. You get a huge audience when Boozy will be on the stand facing Nate. That'd be funny. That'd be hilarious. If that goes to trial on his videotape, that'd be funny as shit. That'd be funny as all hell. History nerd. History is good to know. History is good to know. Most of my history is tied up in legal knowledge, but yeah. Read laws and Google everything mentioned. That's funny. Supreme Court's coming down with decisions as well tomorrow. Squeezing another day into the calendar for tomorrow decisions. So we'll get to do the Supreme Court thing again tomorrow. Maybe they'll drop a big one tomorrow. They'll drop like Students for Fair Admission. Something. The Indian tribe one was pretty big. Maybe if I read the decision in more detail, I'd be more convinced, but it felt in the syllabus like they were dancing on the head of a pin a little bit. You know? Which, you know, okay. I'm gonna try to do both. I'm gonna try to do both. If they drop a really major decision, then
Okay, I'm gonna go back on the record. This is
I don't
State
know
versus
what I'll
Scot
do.
Peterson,
Figure it out.
197166 CF10A. I continue to have Ms. Gomes, Mr. Kilburn, Mr. Klinger present for the state. I continue to have Mr. Igarsh present with Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of the jury. State, anything you need me to address before we resume your presentation?
Well, Your Honor, this was the point we were only calling one witness today, that Mr. Igarsh, I believe, has 2 witnesses lined up for this
They're
afternoon.
waiting, they're ready to go. We're gonna try to get them in before, so we
Okay.
won't have to come back tomorrow.
So I'll just explain that we're doing a switcheroo again. We're gonna pause the state's presentation. We're gonna go to the defense presentation, and then I'll ask the defense to call their next witness.
Judge, if I may, just for purposes of Tuesday, what time do you think we're going to be concluding on Tuesday?
Let me just take a quick look at my
Thank you.
docket on Tuesday.
And they're not meeting on Monday? Is Monday the 19th? Yeah, Monday's the 19th. So they'll be out of court on Monday
I would
for a
probably
holiday.
ask the jurors to be back at 9:15. We'll be able to start at 9:30.
Thank you, Judge.
So they're off Monday for June 19th,
Please bring
off
the jury.
Wednesday because the judge does his own thing on Wednesdays. Are they off tomorrow? He seemed to suggest it's like we'll get through them two today, so we don't have to come back tomorrow. Are they not doing court tomorrow? Maybe I don't have to pick.
This states 7 from beginning to 2:30.
NHTSA mandate ABS in connection with electronic stability control. So they did mandate ABS just alongside of electronic stability control. I just thought it was a thing that came along for the ride implicitly, but they did it explicitly. Okay, well, if they did it explicitly, let's take a look. FMVSS 126. They did it explicitly, then I'm wrong. Let's see. Read the standard. I'm sure they did. Find ABS. Connection. It does imply the existence of ABS, but it doesn't actually say it. I'm not sure who's right in this one. We'll press on. — 2012 is when the standard went into full effect. Yeah, it went into effect September 11th, 2011. Any vehicle manufactured on or after that date. Okay, cool. You had a sensor which would lock up the wheel. That sounds scary as shit. I'd suggest replacing the sensor, but you know. Yeah, I mean, that sounds scary as shit. If it just randomly lock up the wheel, that's a pretty big safety hazard. Yeah, no, you wouldn't want to drive like that at all. No, of course not.
Marjory.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in.
Thank you.
Once you are back at those same seats, you may be seated. All the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get those notepads back out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. When we took our afternoon break, we were still in the middle of the state's presentation. Again, as we have done a couple occasions previously during the trial, based on the agreement of the parties, we're just going to press pause on the state's presentation at this point because of scheduling issues. We're going to jump forward to the defense presentation. They have a couple witnesses prepared to testify this afternoon. Mr. Aguilar, when you are ready, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Deputy Michael Kratz.
Okay. Deputy Michael Kratz on the stand. What you got for us? Whoa. My name is Michael Kratz. I speak like this. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. I think for my next character for D&D, it should be like late night radio show. Well, everyone, welcome to Wacky Wednesday here with Blackleaf. Glad you're all here with us as we look at the traffic top of the hour from you to me. Something like that, yeah. Work on my radio voice. That'd be good for a voice, for a character. Just constantly speaks like that all the time.
Oh, Mr. Savitsky. Hold on.
Down in our lab, where we're looking at the traffic from 9 to the top of the hour.
Court Deputy Unit, we're going to need the TVs off, please. Sir, if I could have you come all the way
I'm
up here to the
silly.
witness stand, please.
Yes, sir.
Once you reach it, but before you have a seat, you can just stop and look at me, please.
Yes, sir.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Please be seated.
Thank you, sir.
And sir, once you are seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair all the way up as far as it will go. Can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
Michael Kratz, K-R-A-T-Z.
And is it M-I-C-H-A-E-L?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Agos, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, Deputy Kratz.
Afternoon, sir.
Can you tell the jurors what you do for a living?
I'm a deputy sheriff with the Broward Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been doing that?
I've been in law enforcement. I just started my 36th year.
So that
No,
would
I've never
be
testified in
starting back
court.
in
I read the pleasure.
1988, is that
Yes, sir.
correct? And just very briefly, just kind of like highlight what you've done in 36 years.
Everything from road patrol to criminal investigations to burglary apprehension team. Was on the motorcycle unit for 11 years. And I'm currently, I do road patrol, and I'm currently in the traffic unit again, but in a vehicle, not on a motorcycle.
Okay. And do you know Scot Peterson?
Yes, sir.
How do you know Scot Peterson?
When I was assigned to the Parkland district, Scott was a school resource deputy at the high school.
Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Yes, sir.
And tell me about the interaction that you'd have with him.
It wasn't too much. Mainly, I would be at the school for traffic issues, traffic enforcement, crash investigation. Mostly would be times where if I wasn't available, Deputy Peterson would handle a crash, and maybe he would ask me to come by the office just to check over the report. He doesn't do that many, so I would look it over, so I'd meet him in his office. I've done that a few times. I was there a few times, several times for traffic complaints. I would go there for traffic enforcement. I would let him know some of the concerns we've had with traffic issues in front of the school. He'd come out and help. He'd put a traffic vest on and help direct some traffic to help the traffic flow in the morning without hesitation. So those types of things.
Would you characterize his demeanor as someone who was professional?
Yes, sir.
And was he helpful to you?
Very.
Did you ever see times where he evidences being a coward, anything like that?
No, sir.
Just the opposite?
Yes, sir.
Now, on February 14, 2018, during the shooting, where were you assigned?
The Parkland district.
And how did you first learn that there was something unusual going on the campus?
I was running radar at the time, assigned to the traffic unit, and dispatch came over the air, but it was very staticky,
mentioned something I really couldn't understand, but I heard District 15, which is another district. And then seconds later, sounded like Deputy Peterson came over there about an incident going on at the high school.
And so what did you hear Scot Peterson say over the radio?
Something to the effect of shots fired or possible shots fired.
And is it hearing Scot Peterson's voice that caused you to be aware that there might be something going on the campus?
Yes, sir.
If you didn't hear his voice, would you have continued just doing radar?
Yes, I would have known there was an issue.
And by radar, just so we're clear, you're like aiming your radar at people and telling people
For
to
speed
slow
enforcement.
down?
Yes, for speed, correct.
Okay. And was there a sense of urgency for you to get to the campus because of the way that he said it over the radio?
Yes, sir.
How so?
Well, I mean, if there's shots fired or possible shots fired, obviously anywhere, that's an urgent situation. You want to get there as quickly as possible.
And how long did it take you approximately to get there?
I wasn't that far. There was some congestion with traffic with maybe a minute and a half, less than 2 minutes.
Prior to hearing Deputy Peterson announce over the radio possible shots fired over at the school, had you heard on the BSO radio any transmission prior to that concerning the shooting?
Prior to Deputy Peterson?
Yes.
No, sir.
And you're aware that BSO has a different radio than Coral Springs, for example, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. So the first transmission you hear is Scot Peterson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then did you listen on your radio after that time for any type of real-time intelligence?
I didn't hear anything on the way, and I'm traveling code 3, which is lights and sirens. And the first thing I asked over the radio while trying to fight traffic and trying to pass school buses and whatnot was, is there a description?
You asked that.
I asked that, but I don't recall hearing anything between those 2 points that I remember.
Let's get to that point. I'm going to have the state play. Do you remember the exact time that you asked for a description?
I do not, but I believe it was maybe around 2:23.
Well,
I don't know exactly the time. No.
Let's start it at 2:24, somewhere around there. Let's see if we can hear him.
State, which exhibit is this? Is this 8?
State 7.
7. Okay.
So
go ahead.
2:24:16, I think, is probably closer to where we might hear that transmission.
901 Pylon.
23, we're talking about the 1200 building. It's going to be the building off of Holmberg Road. Any descriptions? I'm coming up from Westlake Middle. We don't have any description yet. We just hear shots, but there appears to be shots fired.
Pause it for a moment. Did you hear your voice at all?
That was me asking for a description.
Okay. And then to that, my client responds that we
They
don't have.
didn't have a description, correct.
Okay. So did you find him responding to you to be helpful?
I mean, he responded to my question.
Got it.
I don't know if it didn't really clarify anything, but he did respond to my question.
Got it. So you did know that you had no description yet, or at least he didn't have a description at that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's at 2:24, I think we see 2:24:30, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you arrived to the school alone or with someone?
I'm alone in my marked unit.
And by marked, that's the one that you can clearly see you're in a police vehicle, correct?
Yes, it was a Dodge Charger marked unit.
And did you have your bulletproof vest on, or did you put it on?
I did not have it on. I had it sitting next to me in the seat.
And so what do you do? What's the next thing you do?
At that point, Deputy Peterson made a statement, an order on the radio about locking down, when I remember locking down the school and shutting down the road where the intersection. So that was pretty much about the same time, right about after I asked for a description, I believe. So at that point, I'm approaching West Glades Middle, which sits to the west of the high school. So I then decided, per his order, then to go ahead and shut the traffic down, and I called the dividing line. It was kind of the fence line between the middle school and the high school.
When you heard him ordering the school to be shut down so that people couldn't get on to the school, what were your thoughts? What did you think at that point?
That obviously you want to keep people out of the, possibly out of the danger area or the hot zone or whatever was going on.
Okay. And so what's the next thing that you did?
So I'd immediately pull up to that divider line. I was referring to that fence line because the two schools sit next to each other. And then while I was doing that, I observed a small group of children or middle high school teenagers on on the inside of the fence line that runs parallel to Holmberg Road for the football field. They were coming towards me, kind of in a hurried manner, trying to get my attention, or it would appear to me they were trying to get my attention. So instead of waiting for them to get all the way to me, I wanted to drive forward. Since we didn't have a description, maybe they can provide me with something, any intelligence that I can provide everybody else.
And did those kids give you any real-time intelligence?
I jumped out of the car, made contact with them, so I ended up moving further forward on the football field, and I blocked the traffic there. And I asked them, and they said they weren't sure what it was, if it was gunshots, fireworks, or firecrackers. I asked them, what did they see, what did they hear? They couldn't give me any descriptions. They just kind of pointed in a generally easterly direction. They couldn't give me any information.
Just somewhere east?
They pointed in the easterly direction.
And when you asked them, up to that point, you still had no real-time intelligence as to where precisely the shots were coming from, correct?
No, sir.
Can you show us on the map, just generally, where you were? At least initially when you got there, and then where you move a little closer. So if you can come down, and if the football field is closest to you at the top,
This is
can you show us?
Holmberg, so this black line would represent that fence line separating West Glades Middle and Stoneman Douglas. My intention was to stop here, but I ended up moving a little further, maybe a third of the way up on the, they call it the 20 or 30-yard line. On the football field is where I pretty much encountered the children, so.
Okay, so where your finger is up at the
So
top.
pretty much
over there.
behind the bleachers. So I've got the roadway, a chain link fence, the grass, bleachers, and then the.
And you're clearly west of, if this is the 1200 building, you are west of the 1200 building?
Yes, sir.
You can't see Scot Peterson from where you are, correct?
No, I
Okay,
cannot.
thank you. And what's the very next thing that you did, sir?
So as I'm asking several times, can they provide anything, and they were not able to. So as I'm telling them to continue west and get out of the area towards West Glades Middle School, at that point I hear what sound like 4 to 5 gunshots.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say you then hear 4 to 5 gunshots?
About 4 to 5 very loud gunshots.
And what did you do after hearing those loud gunshots?
I immediately got on the radio and I advised, because it sounded like they were coming from a southeasterly direction towards the east end of the football field, maybe like the other end zone.
Okay,
That's the direction it sounded like it was coming.
let's listen to that transmission at 2:25:08.
Tango 2, I hear shots fired by the football field. Shots fired by the football field.
Shots fired by the football field, heard.
Okay, so you can pause it. So that was you at 2:25:08 saying, I hear shots fired by the football field, shots fired by the football field, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, before we get to what dispatch responds, what radio are you putting that out on?
On our Broward Sheriff's Office, I don't have it with me, but police radio.
Okay, and who did you want to hear that announcement?
Anybody that was there, anybody responding there, anybody that needed to know.
Did that include Deputy Peterson?
Absolutely.
And then dispatch responds, I think we heard, shots fired by the football field.
And it sounded like they repeated what I said, correct?
Okay. When you said that, what was your intention? What did you want to see happen when you said it like that?
What did they want to see happen?
Yeah, I mean, did you want to be believed?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I said it as I heard it, and that's what I believed at the time. That was my perception, what was going on.
And when you said by the football field, what were you thinking in your head?
Well, by the football field, I mean, I'm not on the football field, I'm on the roadway stopping the traffic, and I have school buses behind me, 3 school buses, so I'm being mindful of that. And what I mean is, it sounded like it was coming in a southeasterly direction towards, so I'm at an angle on the roadway, so the football field would have been an angle, and that's the direction it sounded like it was coming from me, and they were very loud.
Did you ever think that the shots were coming from inside a building?
At that time, I didn't think so. I was focusing on the football field. Again, we had no description. I didn't know if there was 1 shooter, 2 shooters, 3 shooters. I didn't know if there was a man, a male, female, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. I had known nothing. So at that point, I'm focused on what I heard.
So it never came over the BSO radio that you were looking for somebody in a burgundy shirt,
Not at that point, no.
ROTC shirt,
Not at that point.
black pants,
Not at that point.
white male?
Not at that point,
That never came over BSO's radio, correct?
no.
That's a leading
And
question.
so
Dates
when you
limiting
say,
or
I hear
leading.
shots fired by the football field, football field's not indoors, it's an outdoor football field, correct?
Yes, sir.
Date doesn't want to object to leading, I guess.
In your mind, were you thinking that there
should.
was, you said that you didn't know if there was one or multiple shooters?
I had no idea.
And however many you thought there were, did you think that they were actually on the football field somewhere?
Objection to leading, Your Honor.
About time.
I mean, that's, it is leading, that's over. Go ahead, sir, you can answer the question.
I mean, I guess at that moment, I heard him coming from that direction, so at that point, I guess I assumed they were in that general area. Outside, it was very loud.
And the next thing you did was what?
So I immediately ran to my car. I was still at the fence line, ran back to my car, grabbed my vest, threw it on, ran to my trunk, grabbed my AR-15 rifle. Because I now have 3 school buses behind me, it could be a couple hundred kids. I'm now mindful of that, and now I have them stuck in traffic because we don't want them to go into the hot zone, plus some other vehicles. And because I'm thinking shots coming from a football field, all I have for any type of cover at that point is, there's me, a 6-foot see-through chain link fence, and some bleachers. So I immediately ran back to the back of my car when I got my rifle, and I looked back is when I saw the buses pull up behind me and an SUV, and I waved to the one driver to get down because I wasn't sure what's going on. And then I would say pretty close after that, a person, I don't remember who it was, ran parallel to the fence on the inside of the fence, yelling there was somebody was shot, and pointed east, just an easterly direction.
Was that person specific as to where the person was injured? Any specific location?
No, the person just pointed in the easterly direction from the other side of the fence.
Okay. Did you make another announcement over your radio shortly after announcing shots fired, shots fired?
Shortly after that is when I had a male, at that point, I believed he was maybe a coach by the way he was dressed, and he was escorting what I'm assuming was a student. I think he had pants on, and it appeared he had a gunshot wound to his leg. So he was also now walking on the other side of the fence towards me. So I ran up to him, confirmed, look, he had a gunshot to his leg, and that's when I got on the radio and advised we have a gunshot victim. I then stayed with them, because I'm trying to be mindful of the school bus with all the students on it. And I'm very close to the hot zone, so I escort them down the fence line with my rifle to get them out of the area, to get them immediate first aid.
Let me play 22542 and ask you if you recognize your voice.
Attention all units now working to signal 33, go to Bravo channel for regular traffic.
Some students say they thought it was firecrackers and we're not sure. By the football field.
Okay. So that was your voice, right?
I believe that was repeating what the children told me prior to that, so I forgot about that.
And so again, this is now you repeating by the football fields, correct? Yes?
Yes,
And this is while the shooting is going on, correct?
so that'd be shortly after I heard the gunshots, yes.
Okay. And what's the very next thing that you did?
So when I made contact with assumed he was a coach, and the student, they were on the other side of the fence, so I had my rifle. I wanted to get them out of danger so he can get immediate first aid. I escorted them with my rifle down the fence line. They followed me, being mindful of the school buses behind me that I have blocked. And I brought them further down towards the western end zone, at which time I see Deputy Marchese walking in my general direction, and extremely loud. There's sirens, there's police cars. It's quite chaotic at that point. And I'm yelling at him. His first name is Louis. And I'm screaming, Louis, and he can't hear me. I'm screaming several times. I said, I have a gunshot victim. So I walk him further, escort them further down. School buses are here, and I turn him over to Deputy Marchese, which is Louis, so he can bring him further to the middle school to get him out of the area.
Yeah, this lawyer's been on TV in the
Can you describe for the
past.
jurors how well your
I think he was
BSO radio was working that afternoon?
like
That afternoon,
legal
I had
correspondent for
quite a
some
few,
TV show
quite a
for a
bit
while.
of static and a lot of what I call
He's good.
toning, busy signals. When you would key the microphone, you would just get a solid tone. So it just wasn't working properly at that time. And I had a lot of that problem.
Was the staticky scenario making it difficult at all to hear some of the transmissions?
Anytime they're static, it makes it more difficult.
And when you said the toning, when you hit your button to convey information, was that making it difficult for you to put out information?
It makes it impossible to put out information, so you have to keep trying until it stops.
Was this the first time you ever had problems with the BSO radio?
No, sir.
When did you have problems?
Periodically within the district on a normal day. Our Parkland is pretty much extreme northwest of the county, so there's times you could be all the way out west in the district and you would have that problem. I wouldn't even have problems with connectivity on my laptop because you're so far west. There's times in the district office, the radios wouldn't, they'd call you and you'd have to step out into the parking lot to transmit.
Did you ever complain about the radios?
Yeah, yes. The supervisors knew, and I believe it was reported to the people that need to know. So it had been an ongoing issue.
When you heard the shots coming from the football field, did they seem close to you or far to you?
You know, it appeared to be coming from that direction by the football field, on the east side, but it just seemed extremely loud and almost like they were 30, 40 feet away. I mean, I knew he wasn't right there, but that's how loud it sounded. So when they were that loud coming from that area, and I'm kind of in the open, just a chain link fence, I remember saying to myself, excuse my language, that son of a bitch can see me, but I can't see him, thinking maybe they were shooting at me. I wasn't sure.
You used in your last response, he, and you also used they. Did you ever know in real time whether you were dealing with a he, one person, or multiple shooters?
Not at all, I apologize, I just automatically used the
No,
word
don't
he.
apologize.
Whoever that person was, he or she, it could be they, it could have been multiple. I just did not know who it was. I didn't know, I had no description, so that was my perception at the time.
Did you ever include as a possibility that there could be potential sniper fire in the scene?
At that point, anything was possible.
So are you trained to exclude that as a possibility until you see evidence of it, or include it as a possibility and act accordingly?
We have to keep all possibilities open until they're excluded, of course.
Is that why you took a position of cover?
At that point, because it seemed like it was so close and so loud that all I had was that 6-foot chain link fence. So I just immediately, after getting my rifle, I immediately took a quick position behind my car. That's all I really had for solid cover until things moved along.
Did you see other officers taking positions of cover?
Shortly after, yes.
Who did you see?
So shortly after that, I had maybe 2 or 3 Carl Springs police cars that pulled up to my position. One of the cars for sure pulled up along to the right of my car. 2 of the Carl Springs, who were males, took position up behind their car, and then a female Carl Springs officer took a position up behind my car.
We know in retrospect that it wasn't accurate what you say because there wasn't any shooter or shooters at the football field, correct?
I know that now after the fact, yes.
But in real time, when you gave that information, you were being honest, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't get it right, but you were trying to be honest, correct?
Yes, sir.
That happens, does it happen a lot in law enforcement where you try to be honest and then just not get it right?
I'm going to object to that question, Your Honor, in terms of both relevance as well as.
Yeah, that's sustained as to relevancy. Go
Has
ahead,
that
sir,
ever-
ask another question.
Has that ever happened to you where you give out what you believe to be information that's accurate, but it turns out not to be accurate?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained. Go ahead, ask another question, sir.
The total amount of shots that you heard that afternoon was how many?
The 4 to 5, I'd never heard any before or after.
And when you heard the 4 to 5, you didn't know it at the time where the shooter was, but did you later learn where the shooter was when you heard the 4 to 5?
Through the investigation of the past 5.5 years, I've learned that he was up somewhere pretty much on the 3rd floor, but at the time, I did not know that.
And did you know whether he had made his way yet to the teacher's lounge or whether he was in the middle of the 12th, the 3rd floor?
Upon reviewing some of the timelines that were provided, it appeared that he was, I believe, somewhere about in the middle, somewhere.
Okay. So when you heard the 4 to 5 shots, he had yet to start his shooting outside the teacher's lounge, correct?
It appears so, yes.
Did you think that your radios were patched with Coral Springs at the time?
At that time, no, I did not believe that.
You what?
I did not believe that to be the case. Well, if they did, I didn't know it. I wasn't hearing
Oh, thank
any
you, Eve. That's
unusual
really kind
voices from
compliment. I
cross
really
friends or
like
any
that.
unusual
Thank you.
call signs that I would not recognize.
Did you
Warmed
ever
my
get the
heart.
chance to speak to
Thank you.
Scott after the incident?
After the incident, we were asked, much later at night, maybe 8:30 at night, we were asked to come back
Only
to the
11
command
retweets
post.
to go, guys. You guys have been
And,
doing
I
good this
saw
afternoon.
Deputy Peterson there, and he seemed to be, I don't remember if I spoke to him or not, but he definitely appeared to be visibly emotional, like he was teary-eyed, and he was very upset, and obviously he was going through a time, and I didn't think it was really appropriate at that time to interfere. So I did see him, but I don't believe I spoke with him. I don't
Okay.
recall.
Deputy Kratz, thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good to meet you.
Cross-examination, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Deputy. How are you doing?
Good, sir. How you doing today?
I tend to speak pretty quickly. If you need me to slow down at all, like the court reporter always wants me to, you just let me know. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Now, earlier, Mr. Aguilar asked you about a time at 2:24:16 when you were when Mr. Peterson responded to a question about a description.
Yes,
Remember
sir.
that? Okay. Did the answer that Mr. Peterson, or the answer that Mr. Peterson gave you was in response to your question, correct?
Yes, sir.
Meaning he could hear you.
Yes, he responded, so I would assume, yes, he could hear me.
And earlier under questioning, you spoke about locking down the school. Did you stay in your area? And I'm actually, Your Honor, if I can use the elm, I'm use this now. I'm showing you what's already in evidence of state 1. Do you recognize this area?
Yes, the football field area, yes.
Normally there's a pencil, but it's not working, so I'm just going to point. If I'm incorrect where I point, please,
Sure.
please tell me.
Absolutely.
So your testimony was that you anticipated or planned on parking around there,
If you can move your finger for a
Sorry,
second.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
and you saw students coming from this area,
Say about in the middle. of the-
about there?
About, yes.
Okay. And there's a fence that divides where the students were and where you were, correct?
A chain link
Chain
fence,
link.
yes, sir.
So from that area over there, you moved forward to gather intelligence from them, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once you moved forward, well, moving forward to gather intelligence in a active shooter situation is something you're trained to do, correct?
Yes, sir.
The students pointed east. Is that correct?
Just generally,
Just general. in general.
easterly direction, yes,
Easterly
sir.
direction.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You wouldn't have learned that easterly direction unless you inquired to get real-time intelligence and moved forward to ask the students that, right?
Yes, that was the reason why I did what I did, to try to gather as much intelligence as I could to pass along to whoever, to everybody that needed it.
Because gathering intelligence, as you learned in training, is really important in these types of situations.
It's critical.
Critical.
It's very important.
Now, ultimately, you encounter a kid who was shot in the foot. Do you remember his name? If I say his name, will you recognize it?
I apologize, I'm not sure.
And that's okay. That's fine. But you see someone who's shot in the right foot, who's being helped out by an adult.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you saw that child, you immediately tried to help him, correct?
Yes, I approached them at the fence line, and I escorted them. I was on the other side of the fence, but with my rifle, I wanted to get them to safety, being mindful of the 3 school buses behind me. So I was constantly looking back, not knowing where the shooter might be, and I walked them down the fence line, almost completely to West Glades Middle, where I
Almost
handed
to
them
where
off
you were originally going to stop.
in that general area, and then handed them off to Deputy Marquez.
Did you actually try to get the kid over the fence?
No.
Okay.
I just stayed with him, and then Deputy Marquez took over after that.
Because you were trying to protect the kid who was shot and
Yes,
the
sir.
other adult.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, you stated on direct examination that the shots were extremely loud.
That's what I perceived.
Yes. I know this is a hard question to answer, but can you just describe for the jury how loud? Was it like rock concert loud? How loud was it?
I mean, it wasn't, I wouldn't call it rock concert loud, but loud enough to where it felt like it was pretty darn close.
And you thought, while you were positioned approximately there, you said about the 30-yard line,
That's fair.
that you thought it was perhaps around the end zone?
The general area of where your finger is, yes.
Okay. And that's where you were hearing the shots coming
That's where I perceived it to be coming from, that general area.
Now, you testified 3 school buses behind you that were stuck in traffic.
Because of where I was stopped, so just after I heard the shots, those vehicles that I passed getting there now caught up, and it's one lane with curbs on both sides, so there's nowhere for them to go.
Okay.
So now trapped behind me, and now I feel obligated to protect those students also.
Is that area right around there?
Same area, we're pretty much right where my car was, yes.
And you felt obligated to protect those students in the school bus?
Absolutely.
How did you protect them?
Well, I was there, and I'm constantly being mindful and watching around for a subject with a firearm while the buses are behind me. So even while I was escorting the shooting victim, I'm constantly looking back and scanning around while escorting him down, because I don't know what I'm looking for other than obviously somebody with a firearm, because we had no description at that point.
So even when you were escorting the child who was shot and the adult down to the west side, you're aware of trying to protect the school buses behind you?
Absolutely.
And that's something you're trained to do, to take action.
Absolutely.
In that situation, standing still wouldn't have helped the children in the school buses, right?
Not in my situation.
In
I'm
your-
speaking
I'm
for
just talking about
myself.
yours, just
My
your
situation, it would have not served any purpose to just stand there. So I was moving around.
Now, you never saw Mr. Peterson. He was completely on the other side, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Now, the dispatches that were played, and I can play for them again if you would like me to. When you report the football field, is that information that you're gathering from the students that they're saying that there's a shooting?
No, that's from my perception of where I heard the gunshots.
The reason you stayed in this area is based upon the instruction
You
of
can't hear the
first
court feed
deputy
at
on
all?
scene, telling you,
Brainstorm?
as one of the next responding officers, to lock down that area.
Oh, I had to close the
For the
window.
school to be locked
I was
down,
worried about
and
these
the
things.
intersection, the roadway. Yes, and then at one point, to keep
Pretty low,
everybody
I'm
back,
wondering.
about 500 feet, I believe there was a transmission about keeping people off the sidewalk area.
So that's why you stayed in that area.
Pretty good today, actually.
You didn't go towards what you perceive to be the sounds of a gunshot.
Yes, sir.
If you had not heard that,
Night, they
testified
called the
about,
witness out of order
static
for
radio, if you
convenience and
had not
scheduling
heard that,
reasons.
lock down the area or stay back 500 feet, you would have approached the areas where you thought the gunshots were coming from.
I would have continued on trying to find exactly where Deputy Peterson was, and then continued on to assist on trying to find what was going on in the bad guy.
Because your training is to go towards the sound of gunshots, correct?
That's correct.
And if you don't hear gunshots, your training is try to collect as much intelligence, as much stimuli as possible. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And standing in that position, if not already previously ordered to do so, wouldn't accomplish that, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall being told over your radio by Mr. Peterson that the shooter was in the 1200 building on the second or third floor?
I believe the very beginning, I heard possibly building 12 or 1200, but at the very beginning, but I don't know the layout of that school. I've only been to his office, so that at the time didn't really mean a whole, I mean, it means something, but I would have no clue where that was, me personally.
If not ordered to stay back there, would you have approached the building to try to figure out where the 1200 building was?
Yes,
Once again, that's real-time intelligence you want to gather.
of course.
When the Coral Springs officers pulled up, were they in 3 separate cars, do you recall? If you don't, it's okay.
I don't remember how many cars pulled up, but if there was definitely 3 officers, 2 males, 1 female.
And you were in a position of cover when they got out of their cars?
Yes, and, I'm sorry. Yes,
Yes, okay, so you saw them take a position of cover, you were already in a position of cover?
yes, the 2 males took a position of cover behind their marked unit, and the female officer took position of cover behind my unit.
Then eventually they moved, though, correct?
It was sometime later, yes. I believe it was after we finally worked the way out to unclog the traffic, get everybody out, is when they disappeared. At that point, there was law enforcement absolutely everywhere.
Got it. Just one moment, Trevor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Based on that, you redirect.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Just a few more questions, Deputy.
Yes, sir.
Are you trained to keep people out of a crime scene?
Out of a crime scene,
Yeah.
yes.
And are you trained to keep people away when you think that they might get harmed?
Of course.
Also, you testified that you moved towards those students because you saw them and thought they might have some real-time intelligence to help you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Had you not seen those students, you would have stayed where you were, correct?
Correct.
Also, you said that intel, meaning intelligence, information, is everything, correct?
Very important.
So you continued to monitor your radio after you arrived on the scene, correct?
Correct.
And during the shooting, did anyone ever, either dispatch or any officer, announce to you that shots were being fired from inside the 1200 building?
When I was by my vehicle and the Carl Springs officers were, when the female was with me behind my vehicle and the other 2 Carl Springs officers were taking cover behind theirs, one of the male officers from their vehicle yelled over to me, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "What?" I didn't hear anything on my radio. And he said it like 3 times. They go, "What are you hearing?" He said to me, "Possible shooter and victims in the 3-story building." I think he said possibly on the 2nd or 3rd floor. I said, "Where are you getting that from?" He says, "Our dispatch." And I said to myself, that was my aha moment, that they're receiving real-time information that we're not getting on our radio. And that's when I realized that's an issue.
So Coral Springs had that information, and it had not come over your BSO radio, correct?
Correct. So I immediately got over the radio to our dispatcher, and I said, "This is what the information I just received from a Carl Springs officer. Can you make contact with their dispatcher to verify?" So I put that out immediately.
Okay. And that would have been after the shooter is gone, correct?
I didn't know at the time,
Right.
but I believe I learned now that it's...
Okay. And also, at what point do you learn that the shooter is in custody? Where were you and what were you doing?
We were pretty much still in that position, and I believe sometime later, another officer from another agency, after learning that he had already left the campus, he blended in with the children. They made contact with him at another location out in Coral Springs.
When you heard that Coral Springs knew the specific location of where shots were coming from, is it at that moment that you learned that your radios had not been patched?
Yes, I assume that because they were hearing it, and I never heard that information on my radio.
Who is responsible for getting those radios patched so that BSO officers can hear all the things that Coral Springs is getting?
Judge, I'm going to object to outside the scope and lack of personal knowledge.
Well, the outside the scope is overruled. The other one is overruled, but sir, I don't want you to guess. If you have personal knowledge, you can answer the question, or if you don't, you can say, I don't know.
Our dispatch system, or our duty officers, are generally the ones who put that together. They have the ability, only through many years of seeing it done, and not personally, but I mean, over the radio, where they'll patch two different channels or use a common channel, common talk channel, where you could put other agencies, other districts together for a common talk group.
And you've experienced that before, correct?
Yes, sir.
In this case, did you ever hear the radios get patched?
So I can't say they didn't do it. I can tell you that the information that Carl Springs was telling me, I never heard come over our radio, out of my microphone.
Thank you, Deputy.
You're welcome, sir.
Based on that, any recross?
Yes, Your Honor, just
Go
two
ahead.
questions. Deputy, when you heard that real-time information from Coral Springs, you immediately put it out over there, correct?
Yes, I put over
Why?
the,
Why?
because it was important.
Now, the real-time information that you would receive based upon training and experiences, first officer on scene,
I apologize, could you repeat that, please?
based upon your training and experiences, it would be correct to say that a very good source of real-time information is from the first officer that arrives at a scene.
First officer and whoever has the best advantage of seeing or hearing what's going on.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Agash, is the witness excused?
He is, sir.
All right, sir, you may step down.
Thank you, sir.
very much.
Have a good day.
While he's doing that, defense, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Lieutenant Michael DaVita.
DaVita. In the garden, DaVita, baby. Won't you let them to hold my hand? In the garden, DaVita, baby. Don't you know I wanna be a man? Dun, 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 dun. No, the state did not rest. We're taking witnesses out of order.
Sir, if I could have you come all the way up here to the witness stand, please. Once you reach it, before you have a seat, if you can stop and look at me, please. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. Sir, once you are seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair all the way forward as far as it will go, can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, DeVita, D-E-V-I-T-A.
Mr. Agash, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, Mr. DaVita. And I say Mr. because you're no longer with the BSO, correct?
That's correct.
All right. At the time, however, of the shooting, you were, correct?
That's correct.
And how long had you served in law enforcement?
A total of about 28 years.
And when did you, I'm assuming it was retirement?
About a year and a half ago in December.
What do you do now?
I work for a family business restaurant.
Okay. Now, did you spend all 28 years with Broward Sheriff's Office?
No, sir. I worked for 25 years for the Broward Sheriff's Office, and I worked for just under 3 years with the Seminole Tribe.
Your rank on the day of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting was what?
Lieutenant.
And is that higher than sergeant?
Yes, it is.
What district were you assigned to?
I was assigned to Parkland. Sorry.
And were you a supervisor of Scot Peterson?
Yes.
How long did you know him?
I would have to say roughly just under 10 years.
Okay. Describe for the jurors your interactions with him as his supervisor for 10 years and what kind of deputy he was.
I had to be, I transferred around the sheriff's office a little bit, so I first met him, or I first worked with him when I was the criminal investigation supervisor in Parkland. I was assigned there 3 different times, so that was my second assignment there. And one of my ancillary duties as a criminal investigation supervisor was also to supervise the school resource officers while I was there.
And how did he perform his duties?
Very well. Very well. Scott received the Deputy of the Year in Parkland for the Parkland District, as well as multiple times the SRO of the Year.
An SRO is School Resource Officer of the Year, correct?
Yes, sorry.
And do you recall what year he received Deputy of the Year?
I believe that was 2016.
So that would have been within 2 years of this incident, correct?
Correct.
And what types of cases did he handle?
If I may for a second, like the school resource officers, I believe there was 5 in the city, and we would kind of pick on the guys that worked at the elementary school, be like, oh, you guys gonna do puppet shows for the kids today? That wasn't the same as the high school. The high school was a working man's job and a working person's job. There were fights, there were drugs, there were thefts, plenty of things to keep the school resource officer busy.
Dissing the elementary school
You're
ones.
specifically referring to Marjory.
Dissing
Stoneman.
them.
That's correct.
Disrespect.
Did you have firsthand knowledge of
They're
my
not
client
real
being
police
involved
officers,
in the
they're
investigation of
puppet
all
shows.
those particular crimes?
Absolutely.
Did you know him to get involved in violent altercations to try to separate kids?
Definitely.
Did you ever know him to wait on the sidelines and not jump in?
No.
Were there times where he would jump in even without any backup?
Absolutely.
Let me take you back to February 14, 2018. How did you learn
Of the cops
first
doing
that there
some
was
puppet
something
shows for
going
the
on at the
elementary school
school?
children is making me laugh pretty hard.
I was on the
Part of
phone
it
at my
probably shows
desk
that that's
taking
where
a
we are right
complaint
now.
from a citizen regarding that accident report, so I wasn't monitoring the radio or my computer. I looked down at my cellular phone on my desk and saw I had a text message that I didn't hear come in. And I took a look at it, and it was a fellow lieutenant who was then the SWAT commander asking me, his name is Chris McCoy, asking me what's going on at the school. So while I'm mid-sentence talking to the gentleman, I open my laptop and I observe every single deputy that I have assigned in the city is on a current call at the high school, and it says shooting. So I immediately ended my phone call with the gentleman, so I have to go, and I hung up. And I alerted Captain Jordan that we have to get to the school.
Okay. Did you have a BSO police radio with you?
I did.
And did you begin monitoring your police radio?
I began to monitor it at that point because I was, ended my phone call, and I needed to try and hear what was going on.
Prior to talking on the telephone, were you monitoring your police radio?
I was not.
So you began monitoring it at that point?
Yes.
And did you hear anything that indicated to you, where to go, where the shooter or shooters may be?
At that time, nothing specific as far as where on campus.
Are you familiar with the campus, by the way?
Vaguely, yes. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but
You had visited the school?
yes.
All right. And so what's the first thing that you hear on your police radio as you're monitoring it?
I remember hearing deputies yelling, "Shots fired." It's 5 years ago. It's really, I heard a lot of it afterwards. I don't remember exactly what I heard at that particular time.
Okay. And what happens? You report to the school with who?
With Captain Jordan.
And are you riding together? or
Yes.
separately?
Yes, rode together. I drove.
And is this a marked unit?
No, it was an unmarked unit.
All right. And what do you do when you arrive?
I see a whole line of parents, like vehicles, waiting to pick their children up. I go around them, up over the sidewalk, and I arrive at the front doors of the school.
Was it your understanding that this was, school was letting out at any moment?
Yes. It was.
That's why you saw parents there?
Yes, it was roughly about 2:28, 2:29 that afternoon.
And if there's a potential active shooter on campus, does your training tell you to allow the parents and kids to come into the school?
No.
Tell the jurors why that wouldn't be prudent.
Well, in an active shooter situation, you don't want to add more potential victims to the scenario, so you don't want to invite more people into the school.
And is the area now around the school, is that a crime scene?
Yes,
Do you want parents, kids, people coming into the school and invading on a crime scene?
absolutely not.
And that's how you're trained, correct?
Correct.
What's the next thing you do when you arrive at the school with Captain Jordan?
Deep breaths, Kurt.
We
It's
enter
all
into
gonna
the
be
administrative
okay.
offices, the 100 building.
And what happened next?
We had to be let in. The doors were locked. Somebody came and opened the door. All of the employees that were in there were hiding behind their desks. So it made me believe that it's possible that it was close by.
And what happened next?
Captain Jordan got on her radio to advise that we were on, or she was on scene.
How was her radio working at that moment?
I think initially it keyed up fine. And it didn't take long for it to stop working, though.
Tell the jurors what you mean by that.
There's a situation that occurs, and it's occurred more than once with the radio system with BSO, where a high priority call or situation arises. News travels very fast.
It was nothing I did, by the way. I just want to point that out. This was not me failing.
What's going on, whether they're there or not.
It just took me off screen and
listening
took
to
the
it
video
real
off
time.
screen for
And
no
it causes
reason.
the system to what they call
It's the
throttle.
streaming software's
And
fault.
I'm
It
no
wasn't my fault
technical,
this time.
wizard at this stuff,
I'm a
but,
good uncivil.
with too many users on the radio on the same channel, there's only so much bandwidth that they can use up before you start getting a busy signal every time you try to key the radio. It gives a signal back at you to let you know that your transmission is not going out. No one can hear what you're trying to say.
Do you believe that the radio system that you were given to use on that day was adequate?
I do not.
And so what did Captain Jordan do after she was able to finally be able to key into her radio?
She advised dispatch that she was on scene and basically takes command at that time.
And what happened next?
I saw her getting a phone call, and I just felt like with everybody hiding, I wasn't comfortable standing right in that area. So I went out basically into the main entrance of the school, big red gates and doors behind me, and I covered down on a courtyard, a very vast, wide courtyard.
I want to ask you a little bit more about your radios at that point. Did they ever become okay throughout the time that you're there?
No, not until everything was completely over.
Okay. So from the beginning of the time that you're there till everything's all over, how would you describe the BSO radio system?
It was spotty at best. Some people could get through. I imagine being inside the school with the cement walls and the roofs and everything, it's probably made the situation worse.
So just so we know, when you have cement walls, is it better then to step forward away from the cement walls to try to get better use out of your radio?
Probably.
And was this the first time you ever experienced problems with your BSO radio?
No.
When did you experience problems before?
There was a previous critical incident at the Fort Lauderdale International Airport where they experienced the exact same issue with the radios. But Parkland in particular was very undeveloped in the northwest corners. It was all brand new construction. And we had experienced problems using the radios out in those areas as well. Suspected that we might need another repeater or a tower somewhere to help the signal get to those far-reaching areas. And it was never addressed.
Nice.
The problems you said that existed at the airport, for example, how long before the Marjory...
Yeah, that's sustained. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
Did you ever write in and complain about the radio system?
I had.
No, that's overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the question.
I had, between myself and the previous district commander, we wrote memos and emails to the communications director to try and get some assistance in getting the radios working in those far out northwest areas.
Okay, so tell us what happened next.
While maintaining cover and watching this courtyard, I can tell you that there were no shots being fired at any time while I was there. So my concern was the shooter or shooters looking for an egress, looking for a way out. And I was kind of watching that area that was otherwise uncovered by anybody.
You said shooter or shooters. Did you know how many there were?
We have no idea.
So how are you trained to think?
There's a rule called the +1 rule, where there's one shooter, there could be two. So you're always looking, you never get fixated on one particular area or one person. You have to kind of keep a broad view because you don't know how many there could be.
And when you leave the building 100, do you just walk around upright with no issues?
No, I didn't leave the area immediately. Other officers began to arrive from Coral Springs, literally right behind me, and they had no way of getting in, so I had to back up, open the door with my hand, and allow them to enter.
Were you concerned about getting shot at all?
Of course.
So what did you do to avoid that horrible scenario?
Right up until I let those police officers in, I was positioned behind the big cement column, looking straight down the corridor,
Nice.
not the corridor, but the wide vestibule area.
And Captain Jordan never turned to you and said, hey, let's go to the 1200 building because we know where the shooter's located.
No.
So did it seem like she also had no idea where the shooter or shooters might be located?
Objection, speculation.
Yeah, that's a sting.
Did she ever gesture in any particular direction?
No.
All right, you guys have been good. You
And-
get some.
Why do
You guys get
take
some memberships.
a
You guys have been
tactical
good.
position of cover when you're at that school?
Again, there was a report of shots fired. The people that I encountered when
All
I
right,
first
20
got
gift
there
memberships coming
seemed
your way,
very upset and
guys.
scared, hiding under a desk. I thought
May
it
the
was
fates be
nearby.
with you.
And I went out to basically further protect them, and assuming that there could be a shooter or shooters out there, I kept myself behind a cement column and kept my rifle pointed downrange.
Using something made of cement is a strong choice, correct?
Yes,
And did you ever make your way to the 1200 building?
I did.
Tell the jurors how you did that and why.
The Coral Springs police officers asked me where the 1200 building was, and I let them know it was on the north side of the school, and they said, can you take me there?
Matthew
Or take us
gets a
there.
gift membership.
And I said, yes, let's
Matthew, not
go.
already a member of the
Did you
channel.
know
I
whether the
swear I'll
radios
renew
were
his mod
patched at that
privileges.
point?
I can tell you they were not,
How do you know that?
because the stuff that they were hearing on their radio, I wasn't hearing on mine.
How did that make you feel in that moment?
Like, the radios failed us.
What happened next?
As I started traversing towards a north-south corridor to make my way to the north side of the building, the Coral Springs group stopped at a door to the auditorium. They seemed hesitant to walk past any doors without checking to see if they were either locked or who was inside them.
So even they were very hesitant as they're moving on campus, correct?
That's correct.
And what happened next?
They made entry into the auditorium. I stayed in the hallway to cover their back. They asked a bunch of questions of the kids that were in there, instructed them all to stay in place, asked them if they saw anybody or anything. I don't think they gathered any intel from that questioning. Eventually, they emerged out of the auditorium, and we continued to move towards that hallway to get to the north side of the school.
What happened next?
They stopped and checked every door on the way there. Luckily, everything was secured and locked, so we didn't have much more of a delay in that regard. I could see a figure way up at the end of this hallway, and I called out something that we do tactically to make sure we don't shoot each other. I called out blue, blue, which basically is a code for police. We're friendlies. And the person at the end of the hallway waved us on and said, come on, come on. So we kept traveling to that corner of the north side of the school.
Is that a realistic concern that officers have around other officers at a scene, that you could be shot?
Yes.
Explain to the jurors why that might happen.
People work and police work in various stages of dress. They might be detectives, plain clothes, or the regular Class B uniform. If I knew I had detectives with me that were in plain clothes, I mean, it's not normal to see people in plain clothes walking around with rifles and their guns out. So we always want to try and call out ahead and make sure they know that we're friendlies and don't shoot us.
Was it helpful having
Congratulations,
fewer
Matthew, on
people
being
on
done with law
campus
school.
to deal with?
Of course, yes.
And so,
Good luck on the bar.
how long did it take you to get from the building 100 to the area that ultimately became where my client was?
Anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes, I would imagine.
Okay, and then what happened?
Study, 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 my friend.
I
Put together a
observed
regiment.
Scot Peterson standing there. He had the school radio in one hand and his police radio in the other. He was trying desperately to get information from whoever was on the other end of that school radio. I later learned that that person was monitoring video and watching
Take a week
video
off,
footage
get yourself a
of the
massage,
actual
and then start
shooting,
studying like crazy.
trying to gather
what I did. I
information as
studied
far
every
as the
day.
whereabouts of the shooter.
Tomorrow.
So anyone who says that my
I had a
client was
regular
standing there
routine.
doing nothing, that wasn't your understanding, correct?
7 days a week.
Well, yeah, the objection is
Probably
sustained
studied.
one witness's testimony against another. Again, the jury will decide that. Go ahead, sir.
You saw my client
5
on both
hours
his
a day or
police
something.
and school radio,
Maybe
correct?
more.
That's correct.
And when you were there, you said that you saw him on his school radio.
Listen to
and you
listen
believed he
to
was trying to
PMBR
get
audio
information,
lectures when I was at the
correct?
gym.
Yes.
And
Did
What else
multi-state
did you see?
problems.
I
Had
saw some
Caribou
students
coffee.
running from the 1200
Went
building,
home, did
running
multi-state.
out. There was a
Study, study,
deputy
study.
holding the door open for them.
this is, just so we're clear, this is after the shooting is over, correct?
That's correct.
You don't hear any shots,
Not a
correct?
single shot.
Okay, and you're looking while my client's on his school radio, correct?
That's correct.
And what was his demeanor like at the time?
He was upset. He was agonizing, trying to get more information. He was.
Objection is speculation.
Yeah, that's sustained. Sir, if you have personal knowledge, you can answer the question. I don't want you to guess. Go ahead.
Okay.
How did he look like to you?
He looked visibly upset, shaken.
And what happened next?
More and more officers are descending upon the school by this time. There are people in SWAT gear, both VSO and Coral Springs officers. Some go
Here's one
inside
for
that
you,
first
Matt.
floor of the 1200 building. Others
No
are
cheating.
outside, up against the wall.
Some
tight to the wall
contracts have to
of
be
the 1200
evidenced by
building.
writing. Which contracts
By
have
this
to be
time, no
evidenced
one
by
has
writing?
said
Can you
whether
give me
or
a
not
list, please?
they believe anyone's
This is
actually
only for
in the
Matt.
building as far as the shooter is
Testing to see
concerned.
how he's ready.
But
You
this
say-
is where
you
we're
say-
all staged.
When you say they, no one had said that. Are you referring to your radio? or
Yes.
You're still monitoring your BSO radio?
Yes.
Was there ever a time that you just stopped and said, I'm no longer going to listen?
No.
And so you're listening, and even as people are going into the 1200 building, you're saying that no one had said over your BSO radio, 1200 building.
Objection is believed.
That is.
Well, statute of frauds is the
Go ahead,
global
sir. Finish your
class.
question.
Property,
When they said
land, yes.
I
More than
heard
a year, yes.
1200
Marriage,
building,
yes. What else?
but I understood it to be the area because I also heard 1300. I also heard 700. I never heard inside the 1200 building.
Did you ever hear anybody reference the football field?
Yes, I did. I did hear a deputy say on the radio, shots fired at the football field. And I believe he also made contact with a victim because he called out, I got a victim on the football field.
So could you narrow it down from listening to your radio? Could you narrow it down to any specific location?
No.
Did you ever run into the building when you saw people going in?
No.
How come?
Over $500,
Number one,
yes. One more.
There's already people in there.
What's the last one?
But number two, I'm still waiting
Oh,
to
Matt
find
forgot
out where
one.
I need to
That's
be.
all right. We'll help out, Matt.
And
A contract which
by
assumes
that,
the
I mean
debt
I'm
of
waiting
another
for
person has to be evidenced by
Peterson
writing.
to relay information to us that he's getting, at that time, we
You got
believe,
most of them,
real-time
though.
information.
Good job.
How long before you left, how long was Peterson on his school radio trying to get that real-time intelligence?
Probably an additional 5 minutes while we were there.
So total time, from the time that you get there to the time that you leave him, how long do you see him on his school radio trying to get information from the video room?
Anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes.
Okay. And then when you left, was he still on his radio?
Yes,
So you're not saying that that was the total time that he was trying to get information. That's all that you saw him
correct.
for. When you leave, he's still on his school radio trying to get information from the video room, right?
That's correct.
And you understood that to be to find out where the shooter or shooters are located, correct?
Correct.
Does my client ever shout out anything while you're there?
Is there one more? Let's see. Goods.
I don't recall.
Okay. And what's the
Goods
next
over
thing that you did?
$500.
One of the
A
SWAT
contract that
members
cannot
that
be
was
completed
on
within
the
a
first
year.
floor called out
deal
to us
concerning
and said he
land.
needs keys.
A deal in
I
contemplation
guess some of the
of
doors
marriage.
on the first floor were locked and they didn't feel
A
comfortable with locked doors behind their back, so they wanted to open
Contract which
every door and
assumes the
make
debt of
sure
another
the
person.
shooter wasn't gonna pop out of our
Is there one
classroom.
more?
So I went to Deputy Peterson and
Executor or
told him I
insertion
need his keys,
contracts.
and he readily grabbed them and threw them to me. And I ran them inside and threw them to
yeah.
the SWAT guy.
Forgot all about that one.
And short time after that is when we
I don't even
learned
know what that is.
that the subject was coming down the stairwell.
What? A surety.
Let me ask
Surety
you
is
this.
a.
When you asked Scott for his keys, was there any hesitation at all to give them to you?
None.
And your purpose for using the
Like a
keys
loan,
was
right?
for what?
So that those locked doors on the first floor could be checked for occupancy,
Okay.
possible shooters.
And when he gave you the keys, was he still on his school radio trying to find out where the shooter
Out
or
of
shooters
another?
were located?
Yes.
Well, that's yeah.
And
So
what's the next thing
marriage,
you have?
1 year, land, executor. So an executor contract.
Deputy Peterson relayed to us that
Well, what's an executor
the
contract?
subject should be coming down from the third floor in the stairwell.
What's executor?
Meanwhile, we had SWAT officers with rifles trained in the stairwell, and they're yelling back, "No one's
know
here.
about executor
No
in the
one's here."
context of a will. What's an
When you're
executor
standing
in the
next to
context
my
of a
client,
contract?
Could you look up at the building and see into the stairwell to know where the shooter or shooters are located?
No,
Was there any doubt in your mind then that he got that information from his school radio
that's correct.
after people were watching the video?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened next?
It was at that time that we realized whoever was watching the video
Teach me,
was not
Matthew. Teach
watching it in
me.
real time. He was watching it
Prove to me you have a
after
Jewish
he
doctor.
rewound
Teach
it
me,
with possibly a 20-minute delay. So
doctor.
this whole time that we're waiting for a pinpointed location for the subject, we then find out he already
Is the
left
dev
through the
another
west
but not
doors of
completed?
this building.
Okay, that sounds like
Did
some
there ever
bullshit,
come
but
a
okay,
time
fine.
that you went into the 1200 building, either to render aid or to assist?
I did.
So you
At what point
split
was that?
debt of another into two different kinds of debt?
I went
Okay,
into the 1200 building
well.
to hand Deputy Peterson's keys off. And then I went back in when they said the subject was coming down the stairwell.
But in terms of leaning over and helping with kids and tourniquets and things like that,
I did not do that, no.
okay. And did there ever come a time where you thought that my client really did know where the shooter or shooters were located and maybe was just faking it?
No.
Objection is speculation.
Yeah, that's sustained.
From what you saw, did it appear that my client was doing all that he could to assist?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, cross-examination, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. DaVita.
How you doing?
I tend to speak quickly. If you need me to slow down, just let me know, okay?
Okay.
You arrived on scene after the shots had already stopped, correct?
That's correct.
And when you arrived on scene, there was no fire alarm, correct?
No, I didn't hear any fire alarm.
Now, going back to.
I'm trying to think what else I can ask Matt.
Of the year and the SRO of the year. You actually nominated Mr. Peterson for one of those awards, correct?
Yes.
Which one? If you recall.
I believe it was the SRO of the year.
Matt, can you give me the elements necessary to
SRO of the
create a
year,
trust?
meaning that he knows all of his responsibilities and does them as an SRO.
Yes.
And you testified that during fights, he would jump in with no backup,
No police backup.
no police backup. Okay. Now, upon direct examination, Mr. Argulash asked you about training and allowing parents into the school area. Isn't it true that during your training, during an active shooting, while the shots are being fired, the priority is to seek out the shooter based upon the sound of the shots or other stimuli?
That's true.
So anything in terms of keeping parents out or traffic or anything like that, that's secondary, or maybe even third or fourth, correct?
Fair enough, correct?
Because you stop the shooter, you stop people getting shot.
Intent, property,
you
plan,
stop
trust,
bleeding,
parties,
you
and
seek it out.
purpose.
That's your training, correct?
Yes.
I believe you actually need the, you need
Now,
delivery of the
you
property,
stated
but
on
that's
direct
implied in your
examination
thing.
that
So I'll give you
you
points.
arrived
Good
with
job.
Captain Jordan, initially her radio keyed up just fine,
Yes.
okay? And you arrived approximately what time?
I believe it was, according to the FDLE timeline, it was 2:28.
2:28.
I wasn't looking at my clock at that time.
Understandable. So around 2:28, her radio keys up just fine.
Yes,
Difficulties happen with the radios happen after.
correct.
And you and Captain Jordan arrived after the shooting's over.
Correct.
And trust created by will, you don't
And you
need delivery.
testified that Captain Jordan took command and you
Okay?
basically needed to go do something. You wanted to be proactive.
Yes,
You're trained to do that. Active shooting, you don't just stand still, you go and do something.
Matt may
Correct.
know things I
And you saw
either
people,
didn't know or forgotten.
administrators or whomever, teachers in the
Damn it.
first building, building 1, scared. You went outside to protect them, right?
correct.
And you were trained to do that.
Yes,
You did something.
yes,
Then you went ahead and did another thing. You saw the Coral Springs officers couldn't get in through the front gate. You let them in.
that's correct.
And you kind of like paired up with them, right?
I did.
Okay. And then you went northbound, searching the variety of rooms, heading towards the 1200 building.
Correct.
So you're moving towards where dispatch is saying, I'm sorry, not dispatch, Mr. Peterson is saying 1200 building. You're moving towards that, correct?
Yes,
Either to confront the shooter or to, if it's the rescue portion, to help out with the students, teachers, whomever who have been shot or are deceased.
yes,
And that's based on your training.
yes,
You were asked on direct examination about the reception, and sometimes you have to step forward from a concrete building to get better reception. Do you remember testifying to
yes,
that? Now, based upon your training, though, if they're shooting, if you're being shot at, if you think there's sniper fire, you don't step out to call on the radio, right?
no, you wouldn't.
You take that
All right,
position of
Matt,
cover.
here's one for you.
Actually think
Give me
you're
an
under fire.
example of
Correct?
someone who's 2 steps away from you in the table of consanguinity. Give me an example of someone who's 2
Now,
steps away from
testified
you.
under
in
direct
the
that
table
you
of
were
consanguinity.
concerned about being shot. I mean,
Go.
obviously, everybody there was, correct?
Yes,
But you still moved, correct?
I did.
You still went outside Building 1 to protect those teachers, correct?
Yes,
You still teamed up with Coral Springs to move towards the north side, correct?
I did.
And this is all while you're thinking, I don't want to be shot.
Definitely.
But you still acted.
Yes.
What the fuck is that? For wills, man. For wills.
At any
If we
point
die,
in
if we
time,
die without a will,
as
man. If we
when
die
you're
intestate,
paired up or teamed up with quarrels
we
with
got to know who to
at
give
any
it
point in
to.
time
We
were
got to
you guys
file.
kind
We
of
got to
in a-
find the
like a
table
run
of
or a
consanguinity.
jog?
You don't know that
Fast
one?
walk.
Fast, moving quickly.
Yes.
Because time is of the essence.
Yes.
Now you said, and this is just, for clarification purposes.
Yeah, blood
someone called
relation
out
2 steps
blue.
removed. Yeah,
I
that's
did.
yeah.
You called it out. Was that to Mr. Peterson?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was, okay.
But it's more fun calling
Now,
it the
when you
table of
called out
consanguinity
blue,
because
what
then you
did
won't know what I'm
Mr.
talking
Peterson
about, and I get to laugh.
He said,
Ha, ha,
come
ha.
on up. He waved up.
So that's a proper response, as if
Not
he heard you
father-in-law.
correctly, correct?
Yes.
No,
And he
your
turned around,
grandfather
saw
would be
blue,
the
blue,
answer
and
here.
He saw you.
Yes.
Your grandfather
Waving law
or
enforcement
grandson.
forward. You're not gonna wave teachers forward, right?
Either one would be
Right.
fine.
You're not gonna wave kids forward, right?
No.
Civilians aren't coming forward, it's law enforcement coming forward.
Yes.
And what were you wearing that day?
I was wearing my Class B green uniform.
So like the state, or-
Yes.
so you're dressed as an officer, no question he sees you wearing your Class B green
Right.
BSO uniform.
Correct.
Yeah, your uncle or aunt would be another example. Yes.
Now, you testified that you were still monitoring the radio, and when you heard 1200 multiple times, you thought it was the area of the 1200.
Yes.
Did you hear Mr. Peterson over dispatch say inside the 1200 building?
I don't recall hearing that.
If you had heard that, would you have changed your actions?
It's hard to say because without that real-time intel, it's shots being fired. You don't know if you're walking into an ambush at that time.
Because you didn't have the gunshot stimuli.
Correct.
And you also said under direct that you didn't run in, people were in there, you were waiting for the defendant to relay information to us.
Yes.
He's the first deputy on scene, correct?
Yes.
He's the school resource officer for that high school, correct?
Yes.
The person first on scene with the most knowledge about the buildings has real-time information, should have real-time information, correct?
Yes.
Now, you stated SWAT needed the keys. You ran out to Mr. Peterson, he threw them to you, right?
Yes.
Do you recall him throwing them to you?
I do.
You run them up to the 1200 building,
Correct.
and you throw them to Seward? Do you
No.
recall that?
I don't recall if it was to Seward or one of the SWAT gentlemen that needed it. I'm not sure.
Fair enough, but you
I'm having
were
trouble
inside the
thinking of
building,
bar
you
questions
could
right
see
now. I guess I'm tired.
Yes.
deceased individuals.
I did.
Now, you testified about the video room. Now, when you got up to Mr. Peterson, approximately how many officers were around that area? You can completely ballpark this.
Do you happen to? Here's one for
Including
Matt. Do you
myself
happen
and
to
close
remember the
friends?
term off the top of your head?
Probably a dozen to 15.
If
12 to
we
15.
can't find an
Yes.
error and the state takes the money,
Testified that
there's
he's
this
over
term
the
for
radio,
it.
Mr. Peterson, getting
You remember the
information
term?
from the video room.
If the state
Yes.
takes the money because a person dies without a will and we can't find an error, so
And
the
you
state
later
takes it.
learned that the video
What's it
room was
called
delayed.
when that happens?
Correct? In training, do you learn that it's more
Do you know that one?
efficient to not have to relay radio communications?
Okay,
through a
well, you answer
graph,
mine and then
like
I'll
basically
answer
like the
yours.
telephone game. If you can find out information, just you and I, as opposed to going through 3 other people, it makes more sense, correct?
Sure.
Because there can be miscommunications, correct?
Yes.
As the SRO, knowing the layout of the
No.
building, with the camera system, it would have made more sense for Scot Peterson to go to the video room, correct?
No. Well, it is part of intestate.
can't
Yes,
speculate.
there is a part of intestate, but there's a special name for it.
If he had gone to
So,
the
like
video room,
normally
it
you
would have
follow
avoided
the
that
table,
extra
but some states put a limit on how far you can go
telephone
down the
line, so to
table.
speak, the extra
Sheetment.
communication.
Emily Gale gets the right answer.
If he was
Sheetment.
able to relay that information to us with a working
Emily
radio,
gets the
it would-
point. It's called a sheeting. A sheetment. Good job, Emily. All right, what's your question, Matt?
Now, after you're on the east side, you throw the keys in, eventually you make your way west.
Correct.
Good job, Emily.
Judge, if I may. Mr. DaVita, I'm showing you what's already in evidence as
Can this
states
be,
one. Yes, it can be shown. Yes, Your Honor, I apologize. Typically, there's a pencil you can use, so I'm just going to kind of trace
If
it.
Trump is
If
found
any of
guilty,
that-
his
if
donations
I'm
for his
incorrect or
defense
inaccurate, please tell me.
that's
Okay.
underused seizable
So
for
when you're
criminal
coming over
forfeiture.
from 1200 building, you're running west this way, correct?
Yes,
Why are you running?
No, I'd say no, because they're not
because
the
the
proceeds
last
of the
known
crime.
information that we received.
So I'd say no.
from
Any
that
money
video
he
room
raises
was
for his
that
defense
the subject had left the
would
west
not be
side of
subject to
that,
criminal
through the west
forfeiture
exit
because
of
it
the
is not the
building.
proceeds of a crime.
So you actually ran with Coral Springs officers.
Now, what's
west to
better?
go seek
Here's
out,
a better question.
and that's a proactive move.
Can he use
Yes.
any
That's something
leftover
you're
money
trained to
that's
do.
given to him
Yes.
for his
Does
trial
he need to stop the shooting?
as a campaign expense?
Yes,
You didn't say.
Or
you
can
were
he
staying
use
on
the
spot
funds for his
before you
criminal
did.
trial as a campaign expense?
No.
There's a fun one. Think about it. Yeah.
You were around Mr. Peterson 5 to 8 minutes, I think you said?
about that,
Approximately.
yes.
During those 5 to 8 minutes, did you see anything that struck you as strange from Mr. Peterson? Was his
I'm pretty
conduct
sure the
bad?
answer is
I know you said he
no.
was upset.
But I think it's a
But
fun
did you
question
see, was
anyway.
he still talking on the radio? Was he still acknowledging when people were running by, things of that nature?
Nothing stands out,
Nothing stands out.
no.
You heard the defendant call out over dispatch, stay back 500 feet, correct?
Yes,
Based on your experience and training, that's not taught, right?
I didn't understand the call, but
You didn't understand?
he's on the scene, I'm not.
Did you not understand the call? Because this is an active shooter
Well, the book is still
situation,
tied to
you're
the
trained
crime.
to run
And
in
those
and get the
examples, I
shooter.
think it's because they specifically passed laws for that reason.
It-
The Son of Sam laws.
Like I said, I don't understand.
So I don't think the book
reason
is
for the
normally
call,
thought of proceeds as
but
the crime.
I
Because they had
did
to
hear
pass
it.
a law specifically about that. I think. So. And also in this situation, he's not writing a book. People are just giving him money. So I don't think Samson laws apply.
I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
Any redirect? Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, sir.
Did this channel help you with your law studies,
So
Matt?
while my
Or was it a
client-
hindrance?
Was on his radio trying to get real-time intelligence from the video room. You said that there was a dozen to 15 other officers standing around near him, correct?
Yes,
None of those people were running in the building at the time you saw them standing near my client, correct?
I counted the people that were standing near your client and the people that were at the doorway to that 1200 room,
Okay.
but yes.
So how many people were standing near my client?
I think it was just me and the 4 or 5 Coral Springs officers that just walked up.
Okay. And
Earlier
how
videos were
you
more
feeling
helpful.
at the time?
Does that mean that I went down in skill, or that you gained in skill, or that my
Stressed.
quality went down?
Overwhelmed
Is
a
that an
little bit.
indictment of me, or just because
I
you
haven't
became
been to a scene
smarter?
like this yet. And it was
Have I become not as good and uncivil as I used to
a
be?
terrible situation to be in.
Am I not the uncivil who started this channel?
What is tunnel vision?
Have I failed you?
Mr. Chairman, object outside the scope.
It is, but that's overruled. Go ahead, sir, you can answer the question.
I actually experienced it that day for the first
Yeah.
time ever. When I first learned of the shooting and I had to get to the scene, I got the captain with me, we got in my
Less
vehicle.
hardcore geeky.
And I had such like an adrenaline
We did
dump.
cover a lot more
My
court
heart
of
was
appeals
pounding.
cases. That's true.
I couldn't see. I could only see
Tried to mix it
straight
up a
ahead.
little bit.
I couldn't see peripherally at all. I couldn't see the captain sitting next to me. And here I am, I have to drive. So as I'm exiting the city complex, I can't look to see if any cars are coming out, turning my head completely to the side because I just couldn't see. And it freaked me out a little bit because I'd never experienced that.
Yeah, trying to make things a little bit more accessible.
I remember hearing the captain at one
Trying to
point
make it a
telling me to
little
slow
less
down. You're going to get us both
dominated by
killed.
just pure law geekiness.
It was
Try to make
probably
things
a
a little bit more
30 to
approachable.
45-second drive. It might have taken a little longer, but that's how quick it felt like we got there.
I mean, the
And,
original name of this channel wasn't Internet Law Review. It's just like it's just going to be a
I've
law
heard,
review
you
all
know,
the time,
you know,
right? So
I've
it
never
has
experienced
definitely
that before,
moved
so I
from
definitely
the original
understand
origins
what
of this
that means.
channel.
You
We're just
can't
like, oh yeah, it's
trade
just going to
away
be law review all the time.
No.
because cops are
So
human, right?
it has
Yes.
definitely developed
stress
other
affects cops
interests or
differently.
other aspects to try
Yes.
to sucker people into watching this channel.
Did you stay close to a captain from Coral Springs?
Yes, I did.
Tell the jurors why.
It was Captain Brad McKeon, and it was after I left that 1200 building and started searching towards the baseball fields and the field house, looking for someplace this person might hide. I stayed with Captain McKeon because he had a functioning radio, and I could at least try to relay information that Coral Springs was getting to my BSO counterparts.
Did you feel disadvantaged by not having the information they were getting?
Yes,
Did you feel disadvantaged?
Thanks, Matt. I
because
try
your
to be
radio wasn't
honest in
working
my
properly?
craft
yes,
as best as I can. Try to
You're
give people
aware
my
of
best
the
assessment.
active shooter policy
I really appreciate that.
existed
That's
for
very kind.
BSO at
Thank
the
you.
time, correct?
yes.
Tell the jurors, first of all, what a debrief is, or debriefing.
Judge, I'm going to object outside the scope again.
Yeah, that's overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the question.
A debrief occurs after a critical incident where you talk about what went right, what went wrong, how can we do things better next time, that sort of information.
The most effective way to do a debrief, would that be to ask just some general questions or be very specific?
Well, I think it starts with a general question and the feedback becomes very specific. You end up, getting usually useful information out of doing a debrief.
Did the active shooter policy at the time required a debriefing to be conducted of witnesses of the active shooting?
I believe so. I don't have the policy memorized, but I do believe that, I believe it does.
Okay. Let me just, if you took a look at it, would that refresh your recollection
Sure.
of the exact words?
It would.
required?
Yeah, law talk with Mike is definitely not helping on the brain cell.
I'm showing
domain.
it's been marked as defense.
And he
exhibit
somehow
number 2.
manages to get 10 times as many people
Refresh your
watching his
recollection,
channel
please.
as me. And I don't know what that means about me, my content, him, his content, or anything. I'm just like, this is bullshit.
Yes, okay.
When people eat it
So
up.
is a debriefing required of people who are witnesses to the active shooter?
Judge, I'm going to object to opinion outside the scope, not an expert witness.
No, that's
That's not
that's
appropriate.
overruled as to both. They're not asking his opinion. He's asking, sir, if you have personal knowledge, you can answer the question. Both objections are overruled. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, it is required according to policy.
And who is the person who's supposed to conduct that debriefing?
The incident commander,
And by the way, that
Is
would have
junk
included
food? Yeah,
Scot
maybe.
Peterson, a debriefing of Scot Peterson, correct?
correct?
I honestly
And the
don't think I could do what Law
incident
Talk
commander is
with
at the
Mike
highest
does. I don't think I could
ranking
do
person on
it.
the scene?
Yes,
That wouldn't have been you as lieutenant.
I could do it for a
No,
day or
Who was
two,
the
and then I
highest
think I would
ranking person on the
completely
scene?
crack.
I believe it was Colonel James
I think it would be
Poland.
the end of Uncivil, not only the
Do you
channel, but the
know
person.
if Colonel James Poland ever conducted a debriefing?
I
with
think
my
we'd be
client?
doing the Joker
I do not
laugh
know.
and me being carted
And-
away.
If Colonel Poland does not conduct a debriefing of my client, who ultimately is responsible to ensure that that gets done?
Judge, I'm going to object to relevance.
Yeah, at this point, that's his thing. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
Judge, if we could just go sidebar on that one
Sure.
point.
I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it. He just totally turns off his brain completely. Maybe Law Talk with Mike doesn't have a brain. Maybe that's the secret. I know that's not true. I'm just playing. Yeah. Yeah. It says more about people in general, right? Like, so I'm doing like hardcore law over here, and people just want Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. I'm in the wrong business. I just need to, like, I don't know, drink so much or something that my mind completely shuts off and just point and laugh. He unbuttons his shirt. Nah. Is this working for you guys?
The prosecutor asked you about my client possibly going to the video room and leaving the scene. You remember him asking you about that?
Yes.
Without question, where my client was the hot zone, right?
Yes.
By hot zone, tell the jurors what that means.
A hot zone is the general location of the incident in question. It would include buildings adjacent to, the parking lot in front of. Obviously, after mentioning of shooting at the football field, it would have included the football field. It's basically a danger zone. It's where you expect to find the shooter.
Had my client gone to the video room in the 100 building, he would have been out of the hot zone, correct?
Yes.
That would have been safer for my client.
Convicts a
correct?
jury women of killing a dad with
But under the
lies.
circumstances, then
Yikes.
the only way he would then be able to relay that information to the people waiting for it on scene would be through his
Dude,
radio, correct?
Shit.
Yes.
And the radios were malfunctioning.
She's 18?
They were.
She's
So
18 and
staying
threw
on the
lie onto
scene in
her
the
sleeping
hot
father?
zone and
Holy
announcing what
shit.
he was hearing over the radio was the best practice, wasn't it?
She going to
believe so.
jail. Holy
That's the
shit.
best way he could be of service to everyone on the
Dude.
scene, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Based on that, any recross?
Yes, just a couple of questions, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
You testified on redirect about that you had tunnel vision on the car ride over.
I did.
You still acted though, right? Even though you had tunnel vision, you were still driving there.
I did.
You still got there.
I did.
When you got on scene, you still went to the 100 building, correct?
Yes.
You still went outside the 100 building to protect the teachers, correct?
I did.
You still teamed up with Coral Springs, correct?
Yes.
You still went north to the 1200 building with Coral Springs, correct?
I did.
You still got the keys.
You don't
from
think her
Scot
father
Peterson
felt
room,
that?
Correct?
Yes.
I don't
Still
know,
went
man.
west to search for the shooter, correct?
I did.
So you took all those actions even though you suffered tunnel vision on the car ride over.
I did.
Nothing further on.
Okay.
Holy
Real
shit.
quick sidebar with the lawyers, please.
I didn't know about that case. That case completely missed my attention. She going to jail for life.
press pause on the trial at this point. Again, that schedule, just sort of an update, that schedule estimation that I told you on Tuesday seems to be holding true. So again, number one, big picture, we're way ahead of the original schedule that I gave you, way ahead. Number two, the trial is not going to be in session tomorrow. So even though it was on the schedule for tomorrow, which is Friday, June 16th, I'm not going to need you here Friday, June 16th. Okay? You can go back to your normal lives tomorrow. Likewise, remember on Monday, the schedule, we were never going to be here on Monday. Monday is a court holiday. The courthouse is closed. So the trial is going to resume on Tuesday, June 20th. I'm going to ask you to be at the jury room at 9:15 a.m. 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, June 20th. Again, no promises. Things are fluid, but it appears, in fact, that the state is going to be able to conclude their presentation on Tuesday. Okay, and then we'll turn to the defense presentation, or maybe Wednesday. Okay, one of those two. That's number one. Ladies and gentlemen, number two, the juror with the 10-day issue would work. I think Tuesday the 20th would be the 10th day. I'm going to have a final answer for you at that point. I don't want that juror to be concerned regarding the loss of any of the PTO time.
They still aren't able to get legal to bend on this? Holy shit.
We're going to have a resolution to it the next time I see you on Tuesday, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, since I'm not going to see you for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, let me emphasize again, please, the same admonition as always. Please do not discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else. Please do not do any research on this case, directly or indirectly, from any source whatsoever. Anything having to do with the people, places, parties, anything that you've heard so far in the trial. No research on the internet, on social media, any source whatsoever. I'm going to remind you to please do not watch the news. Do not read the newspaper, okay?
But subscribe to Uncivil Law.
Notepads in the envelopes in your chairs. They will be waiting for you when you come
I need
back.
judges to start saying subscribe to Uncivil Law. That's what I need.
Back at your normal lives Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the holiday on Monday. I will see you all on Tuesday, June 20th at 9:15 a.m. at the jury room.
You don't necessarily have to watch the videos. Although I do have 2,100 videos, many of which are not about this trial. So the jurors should absolutely subscribe to my channel and watch the videos not about this trial. They should do that. That'd be great.
Okay, we're outside the presence of the jury. Everyone can be seated. Okay, I had sustained the state's objection. I did tell the defense that I would allow them to ask any questions they would like of the witness as a proffer, so it would be part of the record if needed. Mr. Igosh, any additional questions that you have, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Referring to the active shooter policy 4.37.3 debriefing, you've had a chance to review that, correct?
I did.
And it is a requirement that the incident commander be responsible for conducting a debriefing, correct?
This is for the purposes of appeal, by the way.
Timing of
In
that,
case he's
it
convicted,
says in
right?
a timely manner.
It's for the purposes of
correct?
appeal,
Yes.
so
Your
the Court
understanding
of
of a
Appeals will
timely
understand what
manner
he would
means
have
what?
testified to.
As soon as
So
practical.
it's part of preserving your objections.
So, to be conducted the very day of the shooting would be the ideal scenario, correct?
Yes,
Because memories don't get better with age like wine, correct?
right.
And if for some reason a debriefing is not conducted by Corporal or Colonel Poland, who ultimately is his supervisor?
Sheriff Scott Israel at that time.
Would it have been Sheriff Scott Israel's obligation to ensure that Colonel Poland did his job and conducted the debriefing if he doesn't do it?
I would assume so.
And if the debriefing would have taken place, there would be a written record of precisely what it is that my client was thinking and doing during the shooting, correct?
Yes,
And that would be part of the record, correct?
it would.
And some of the questions that would have been asked would have been, why didn't you go into the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
Nothing further.
State, do you have any questions?
I did not.
Okay, sir, you may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, State, is there anything else that you need me to address before we recess the trial until Tuesday, June 20th at 9:30?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything else you need me to address before we recess the trial?
Just to renew my objection, ask that the court allow that testimony to be admitted. I'm assuming the court's ruling, if the court's ruling stays the same, then I would simply renew my objection and preserve that issue.
Yeah, the objection, I'm gonna stick with the same ruling. I don't find it to be relevant. It's nothing this jury's gonna be asked to decide, but it is over the defense objection.
Okay.
Nothing's on the defense.
I'm gonna be in recess until Tuesday, 20th at
Recess. Okay, look, it's over. All right, we're just you don't get to hear the words, but it's over. It's fine. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So we will be on tomorrow for Supreme Court React. And then we might do some legal news roundup. So we'll be, I guess, on at 9 for Supreme Court React and legal news roundup. So that will be exciting. Because the Supreme Court issues opinions at 10. So we'll be on at 9. Tetherball kicks ass. I miss Tetherball. I need more super chats so I can get a massaging chair. That's what I need in my life. I need a massaging chair. All right, I'm going to sign off for now. We may do an unboxing of the toaster oven, but not right now. Later. When I'm hungry again, maybe. I did a live stream react to some Supreme Court case, I think, or something. I don't even remember what it was. I made it unlisted. It'll be available at 5 o'clock with better audio. So how's the gym going? Gym's been going great. Thank you for asking. I went yesterday, and I think I went both yesterday and the day before that as well. I posted my results on the workout app. It's been going great. Thank you for asking. I've been getting my lifting on. People say I'm looking better. People say that my face is looking thinner. People say that I'm looking more swole. So, oh, that's going pretty well. Yeah, it's going pretty well. The last 2 days I've been there, I've had trouble getting all the exercises done because of the demand in the gym. So, like, I missed some of the workouts because I couldn't get access to the machines, but I still did, most of it. So yeah, I put it in there in terms of I logged the workouts and shared them so you can see for yourself. Yesterday I maxed out the leg press machine. 400 pounds at 10 reps on leg press. 400 pounds. Maxed out the machine. Ooh, exciting. Exciting. So, and I could go more. So we're going to have to go to the ones where you put the plates on them, because the machine with the stack, where you just put the pin in it, I can no longer use because I've run out of weights. I have to now load up on the free weight machine. How much is that in kilograms? Okay, Google, how much is 400 pounds in kilograms? $180 kilograms. So, yeah. Good times. Usually just use 2 to 1. It's 2.1, isn't it? 2.1 kilograms per pound. Or 2.1 pounds per kilogram. Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah. So we used the machine with the weight stacks where you just push the pin in it. And now we're going to have to go to the machines where you put on the plates, which is annoying because moving all those plates around is kind of heavy. But that's what we're doing now. Yesterday I did load a high cable pulse, working the core. And I did, what did I do yesterday? Oh, I did one arm lat pull downs, I think, yesterday. And I did something else. Okay. Yeah, exercising before exercising just by prepping the machine. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So, good times. 2.2 pounds is a kilogram. Neat. What is it? 16 pounds in a stone? That is it, or is it 14 pounds in a stone? Okay, Google, how many pounds are in a stone? 14 pounds. Okay, Google, what is 400 divided by 14? 28.5 stone. Ugh. For the English out there, I guess. Yeah. Oh, Lord. All right, I'm going to sign off now. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. All the rest of it, we may do an unboxing later. We'll see. I've been on civil law. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.